Hey everybody, Norm here. This past summer, in the middle of planning a wedding, I just really haven't had any time to go out eating. But I have been doing a lot more cooking and using the sponsor of this week's episode of This Is Only a Test, Blue Apron. They're, of course, a service that delivers ingredients, recipes at a great price and teaches you how to cook. For less than $10 per meal, Blue Aprons delivers seasonal recipes with, my favorite part, pre-portioned ingredients to make home-cooked meals. That makes everyone happy. Blue Apron knows that when you cook with incredible ingredients, you make incredible meals. So they set the highest quality standards for their community of artisanal suppliers, family-run farms, fisheries, and ranchers. Some of the meals available in August include spiced pork burgers with goat cheese and cucumber corn salad, or chicken tinga tacos with summer squash and tomato salsa. Really yummy stuff. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/test. Again, that's blueapron.com/test. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, and thank them for supporting this week's episode. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. And now on with the show.
Hey, let's start the show.
For Thursday, August 25th, 2016, welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello, and welcome to This Is Only a Test. Sans Norman Chan. Yep. I'm Kishore Hari, subbing in for the MIA Norman Chan, and joined in, by, as always, by our co-host, Jeremy Williams.
Hello, Kishore.
And welcoming back to the podcast for the first time in a while, Sir Patrick Norton. I have to add the sir for some reason.
I'm honored. It's much easier to live up to than Saint Patrick.
Ooh, St. Patrick, that's too high of a bar.
Exactly.
No, I would never put that on you.
I appreciate that.
Sir allows a certain level of frivolity that I think you can still enjoy. For those of you who don't know, Norm is MIA. He's out on the Arctic with Chris Hadfield, which is a sentence that is almost unreal to say.
It's so fun.
It's amazing. He's out there shooting some premium videos and some videos for the tested community. He's on a Russian icebreaker in Greenland, so I hope that actually is where he is.
With Joey.
Oh, yeah, Joey's out there, too.
Yep.
Joey I'm not worried about. I'm not worried about it at all. I don't think Norm's ever seen temperatures below 40 degrees. That's who I'm worried
Born and raised in Northern California.
Exactly.
Oh, boy.
How are you guys doing?
So far, so good. Yeah. You know, what I realized, this is a potential for a bunch of dads return right now.
Oh, we have 3 dads?
I can't remember the last time this podcast had 3 dads on it.
Oh.
So I'm just saying.
All right, the dad humor precedent is set already. Here we go. And how are you doing, Patrick?
I'm good. I'm actually still wrestling with my just incredible jealousy of Norm getting to go to the Arctic. Just because I've always wanted to go up to Greenland, Iceland. Iceland's just wow.
So seriously, I thought about Tanya Harding him at a couple points where I was just like, if I hurt him bad enough, like, where am I on the list?
Yeah, right.
Because, like, you know,
in the org chart,
I would never try to hurt Joey because Joey would probably hurt me back quicker than I could hurt him. Yeah,
big guy.
No question.
just wait till he's editing with the headphones on and wail right about here with the heaviest object you want.
No, I don't want to hit him in the head. I
Well,
want to hit him in the head. It's all about the knee.
How badly do you want to go?
I thought about
Because Joey
it.
will hop his ass on a boat with a knee brace.
Yeah, Joey was going to go regardless.
But it's worth pointing out that Norm was so committed to going that he, in fact, left for this 2-week journey 2 days after he got married.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
that is it a testament to his
The
new
strength
wife,
of his-
I think.
Yeah, right.
Well, more than anything
I
else.
think you're right. But he also is clearly committed to this, so I don't know if any kind of physical abuse would have kept him from it.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Hence
the other...
the traumatic head injury and him being in a coma.
That's the other big news of this week. Our Norman Chan officially became a Mr. Chan this past weekend.
Are you not Mister until you're married?
Sure.
That's a new interpretation. I like it.
All right.
Sure, why not? And the nuptials went off. There's a lot of old friends from Tested there. It was a grand old time.
Yeah, check Twitter for a few photos, right? You got one of the old team together.
Yeah, I
Will and
found
Norman?
Will as one a fan noted that he has gone full history teacher in his look these days.
Yeah, there's nothing ironic about his outfit. He's just given in to the 40s. Yeah.
Congratulations, Will. Look forward to that teacher tenure soon. But why don't we dive into some pop culture? So we've talked a lot about the Olympics on the show, and they're finally done.
That's it.
It's done. We don't have to think about them for another 4 years or 2 years until the Winter Games.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys watch the closing ceremonies at all?
No.
Me neither.
No?
No, but I saw the highlight.
Wait, what highlight do you mean?
I saw the introduction, the passing of the torch to Tokyo.
Oh, which I watched this with my son, and when it sort of came about, there's a video intro of the mayor of Tokyo. Is that right? Governor of Tokyo,
Yeah.
something like that.
Important person.
And when he like morphs into Super Mario in a car to try to get to Rio quicker, and then I see the pipe. My son watches me slowly lose my mind. Where I was like, "What? What is this? What is?" Because we had watched a whole Olympics that was about cultural flair and celebration of the history and of celebration of that South American Brazilian feel, like almost sans technology, and then all of a sudden, 100% the other direction.
Yeah, we had like a Pac-Man cameo, and then all of a sudden, it's less of a morph as it is just kind of like a jump cut. They didn't spend too much money on the transition, but he turns into Mario, and then he in Tokyo, he jumps down a warp tube. What do they call those? Warp tunnel and warp pipe.
I just go with pipe.
And then, of course, through the world to the other side where he comes out in Brazil, live on stage as dressed as Mario.
Did you see it, Patrick?
No.
It was amazing. It was one of those like, hey, I think the Tokyo Olympics are going to be pretty damn fun because it's all going to be old video game characters come to life.
Yeah, it's interesting that they chose that as to represent themselves. I mean, I like that.
I liked it a lot too. I hope it portends something for those games, because they certainly were not like, we're going to celebrate the ancient culture of Japan. They were all forward thinking.
Well, we're not there yet, so who knows what it'll be in 4
No,
years.
I think we know everything we need to know from those 4 minutes in the closing ceremony.
I think they're going to try to insert Mario Brothers as an Olympic sport.
What would that look like?
Just like
a bunch of people, like esports, a bunch of people sitting staring at monitors.
That's it.
Furiously.
Oh, I did not think that's what you meant. Like, my initial vision was like literally people on a track running around and they have to like jump up and hit a box in the air.
No. I meant playing video games.
What's
but it'd
I
be
can't remember the name of the Japanese game show where they would do all the horrible like obstacle course stuff.
Yeah.
Isn't that every Japanese game show?
Yeah, pretty much.
But that would be amazing to actually have real life Mario in the games. Mario Kart. Now that I would watch. Let's get to the kind of the big news story of the week that's sort of dominating headlines, which is the end of Gawker.
Yeah, well, it's been coming.
It's been coming, but this is the official end. We saw the litany of goodbye Gawker posts and hot takes on it. And I think we're going to try to avoid any sort of big takes on it. But what is your sort of general reaction to the end?
You probably have stronger feelings than I do, Patrick.
Oh boy. Okay, so I'm a big First Amendment guy. And part of the problem with believing in free speech and the American concept is it allows people who are vile and disgusting to speak openly. And I'm not actually saying that in terms of Gawker. I just remember, the ACLU defending the Illinois Nazis party's right to speak publicly. And there's few things I hate more than fascists and Nazis, Illinois Nazis or otherwise. But technically, under the Constitution, they have a right to free speech. So what's scary to me about this is, we have a lot of incredibly wealthy people in the United States. probably not that many that have Peter Thiel level wealth, but basically, Peter Thiel, decided to do a very long game and to wipe out Gawker, and he did. And he did it in a way that managed to keep his name out of the headlines for so long. And they chose the stories so carefully that they, because I think there's like at least 4 different lawsuits that he's funded that are working through the various stages against Gawker. But the one that kind of they got the lucky breaks on was the Hulk Hogan one. And
that's a weird sentence. Got lucky breaks on a Hulk Hogan sex tape.
Yeah, and Hulk Hogan managed to get the trial in his hometown, which pretty much guaranteed him a particularly receptive jury. There's a lot of questions that remain as to what's going to happen as this case works its way through the court system. Because it will continue to work its way through the court system. But it basically means if a rich guy gets pissed off enough, if a wealthy enough person that's patient enough gets pissed off enough at a publication, they can probably take it down financially.
But isn't that just as part of living in America as the free speech aspect? This is like the two sides of living in America, that we have these freedoms. They give us the right both to say idiotic things and make a lot of money off of it, and also to use your money as you will to combat that if you wish to. And so this is just the natural order of things as far as I can see.
So I work my podcast is hosted by Mother Jones. And Mother Jones was also sued by a billionaire recently regarding a piece. And they had to defend it for a long period of time. And it forced them to almost change their funding model for how they support it. So I understand the chilling effect, which is what I hear a lot of outlets talk about. And how the inequity of somebody rich coming to bear. Don't you think something is just going to rise in place, though? If Gawker goes away, what's next?
Well, one of the things that not to get too inside baseball is one of the things one of the Gawker editors in the post put up was essentially, or former Gawker editor, was that Gawker was out Gawkered by Twitter and Facebook, and Twitter and Facebook have the advantage of not being responsible for what people post, and B, these massive kind of reactions on Twitter or Facebook are so distributed, it makes, trying to sue everybody particularly difficult. But, the line that struck me is Gawker got sort of big enough and slow of foot enough and old school enough that they finally got caught. But it's messy. Like, I'm with you, right? I got to spend some quality time and, very tiny amount of quality time in East Germany before the wall came down. And
wait, really?
Yeah, I got to do like a day in East Germany. I was on a tour. I was hosted by a German family, and then we got to go to Berlin, and we spent some time in East Berlin while we were there. And the big takeaway was when you're sitting like 40 years after the end of World War II, and you're looking at one side of the fence, and everything's vibrant and built and functional, and you go to the other side of the fence, and there's still rubble remaining from World War II. The toilet paper looks like it was made out of something that you wouldn't use to sand wood because you would mark the wood up too badly. And, waxed paper cups don't actually hold water. So I'm a big fan of capitalism, but at some point, you get to a point where, and this is, you're right. This is not new. I mean, look at William Randolph Hearst, who was fabulously wealthy and owned some of the biggest media outlets and destroyed lives, and may or may not have been responsible for the death of William McKinley.
Pissing off rich people has always been bad for business. Like going back in time,
right?
I'm sort of stuck with less of the media hot takes. Like I just feel like the vacuum will be filled by something else. I'm more struck about the inequity of a system where it's like, well, if I have money, I can get good lawyers. And those good lawyers can get stuff done. And I was like, that feels scummy to me.
Yeah. Well, but there is
the inequity of the legal system based on money sucks. And it's been that way forever.
Yeah.
But I that's what I'm hit with more than anything.
It's not just the legal system; it's the political system.
Sure.
As well.
Sure.
Well, that was a downer.
Yeah, it's a downer, but I mean, like, it is the big news of this week. I mean, It was surprising that Univision won the bidding for it because they've actually been doing some interesting plays in the tech space, more so than a lot of the other traditional TV networks.
Did Univision go for it for the titles, which are all awesome because there's still some amazing titles. I mean, Lifehacker's still one of my favorite websites of all time. Gizmodo's doing great. IO9's a subset of Gizmodo.
People shit on Gawker, but Gawker's subsets were incredible. Like IO9 was life changing for me personally, and Lifehacker I use.
Yeah.
Sometimes shamedly use too much.
But I don't know how the and I've said this to the face of various Lifehacker editors. I don't know how they produce as much content as they do, of as high a quality as they do. It's incredible. The website is extraordinary. Did they buy it for Kenya, the publishing platform? I mean, it's going to be very, very interesting to see, what happens with them moving forward.
I'm excited about what it is. If we've seen anything from the success of Fusion, which I think is successful, even though some people may claim otherwise, I'm excited with sort of the merging of the two mediums. Speaking of other pop culture news, you've had some special news come up on Tech Thing. For those that, why don't you introduce people to Tech Thing for some of the tested listeners that don't know?
So I host a weekly video show called Tech Thing. It's kind of like the Mickey Mouse Club for geeks. We review
That's
products.
your tagline? Really?
No.
So you're going to go on to become a pop star? Because that's the Mickey Mouse Club.
That's where the real money is. No, I probably shouldn't say things like that on anything that might end up on YouTube for fear that some Disney lawyer will come and beat me half to death with a hammer.
You can say anything you want.
You can say anything you want.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you won't get sued for it.
Well, is that true?
That's
Peter Thiel, we love you. No, leave us alone.
But this is a crazy. We had an email from one of our viewers, and his mom had one of the pop-up ads show up on her computer. And, it was like, you have violated tech support computer mayhem. Dial this 1-800 number and we'll fix everything. And the 1-800 number, of course, goes to a tech support scammer, which are generally overseas boiler shop operations. And they're basically like, they get you to load a remote access tool, and they do like, oh my goodness, your machine has 387 viruses and it's actively being used by terrorists and hackers to destroy freedom and joy around the world. And they build this really awesome game of fear.
Sounds like a public service.
It does, doesn't it? And in this case, his mom had given her checking account number to the tech support scammers to pay $550 for their services and a $50 piece of software that appears to exist, so that tech support scammers have something to sell that's not a major branded tool. And there's been some interesting cases recently where people who are highly technical have just been like, 1-800 tech support scale, or they get the RAM. The other ways these are coming up is the messages that lock up your computer and play an alarm noise and refuse to let you close the window.
Yeah.
And the other way they're doing this is they're just cold calling. So the one case they cold called this guy, and he spent like 65 minutes. It's just seeing how much of his time he could waste before we finally shut him down. There's a YouTube video, but this is my personal favorite. Ivan Kwiatkowski infected the computer of an Indian tech support scammer with the Locky ransomware.
I love this. I love this so much. So he set up a virtual machine. I saw you tweet this story and I read it. So he set up, before he called him back, he set up a VM. And he called in and he gave them remote access to that VM.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the tech support scammer, they logged into the machine, went into DOS, typed in some nonsense, and told them he was loaded with viruses.
And that's what they do. I mean, from a social engineering standpoint, they're doing some classic kind of, they're doing fear mongering, and they're showing people shit they don't understand. Wait, I can curse.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that.
I so rarely curse into a microphone. And they show people, it's usually really horrible stuff like a directory list, and then basically being like, oh, this is the terrible such and such, and just pulling stuff completely out of their asses. And people panic and they pay money. So in this case,
what did he put on the virtual machine? He should have put like actual folders, been like terrorist plans.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Which would be pretty awesome. But he basically had he's a security researcher. He just happens to have the Locky ransomware
He's
available.
a paid hacker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
security professional.
Right.
let's call him
Potato.
He just ruined the day, week, and or life of a cluster of tech support scammers.
So beautiful.
Yes. So let's call him a security professional.
I'm happy to call him whatever you want.
Yeah, whatever he wants
saint.
to be called. And nuked, nuked their apparently their entire network.
He sent him a JPEG with his with a fake credit card number on it. And when they opened the JPEG,
they double clicked on the JPEG and
was
all
the
hell
payload.
broke loose.
I love it.
Yeah, and there's so many lessons inside here. One is like, don't click on anything anybody sends you an email unless you're expecting it and you know them and trust them. And even
suddenly,
then,
no tested listeners get any work done after this podcast. No, we're not opening any attachments ever again.
But it's been amazing, like, because these tech support scammers. It was interesting because we had the case with the tech support. The guy's mom got scammed, and it is a huge deal. Does
that FTC do not call list work anymore? Even
well, to some degree it does, but at this point there's also so many rogue agents, scumbags. Let's just call them scumbags. There's so many scumbags out there. Like, I'm getting a half dozen, and at the worst I've gotten a half dozen unsolicited calls a week, right? And they're basically, they're spoofing numbers and they're robocalling and they're just trying to do whatever they're trying to do, like usually vacation scams or stuff like that. So, to some degree, there's no real easy way to fight those. Although I'm sure AT&T and Verizon and everybody else are working on it just because they want to reduce the tech support load of people calling up and whining about it. But in terms of actual real businesses, yes, the do not call numbers work. In terms of people who are fundamentally evil trying to strip money, no, they do not work.
There's some rumors about Apple trying to take steps against this with the next update. It might be one of those words they have up on the projection screen.
The feel good thing.
Yeah, the feel good thing.
To open the thing. I have to say, Wizard World Con, that comic convention, wouldn't stop calling me for 6 months. And to get off the list, when I finally was like, I've had enough of this, I was like, I don't even like comics. And I just felt guilty for weeks afterwards. Yeah. Let's dive into some more optimistic technology news. I think I cut Patrick off there. What were you about to say, Patrick?
I was going to say the FTC has a super awesome website that about tech support scams. It tells you how to respond to them, which basically involves burning your system to the ground and rebuilding everything. Well, because
light it on fire.
Yeah. Well, in many cases, they install security software in your machine that may be a rootkit or a backdoor. You basically need to. In the case of this guy's mom, she needed to, get a new checking account number, credit card numbers, because it's just, if you've responded to the scam or a family member's responded to the scam, it's basically probably going to be a two-stage thing, because they're probably, they may be honest dirtbags that are just trying to bill you once, but they're probably going to take that number and either hit it again. But there's been a lot of refund scams where when they're about to get shut down, they call every number they have with an active credit card or checking account number and like, oh, we owe you some money back because we're going out of business, so we're going to refund you. And then they hit your account a second time to steal more money from you. So
okay, we have to talk about something optimistic, otherwise I'm going to never use my credit card again. So talking about somebody that's hit your bank account, let's talk about Elon Musk, Jeremy. He's hit you up for $1,000 so far, right?
Man, he's not a scammer, is he?
No. Let's hope not. We got some new Tesla product announcements this week.
Yeah, so there's a brand new level of the Model S and the Model X. So if you already have a pre-order for the P90D, you can pay an extra $10,000, get yourself a P100D.
So let's break it. Model S is a sedan, right?
Yeah,
and the X is the crossover.
Yeah, it's the SUV.
And then the 90 and 100 really speak to the battery.
Yeah,
right?
so now they can go 300 miles.
We talked about this.
315.
Sorry, 315. But it's an extra $10,000. So that's quite a lot of money. But who knows, if you're in for a 90D, maybe that's a drop in the bucket. I don't know.
So we're talking about going from about low 200s. So it was like 227, I want to say, maybe 247 to 315.
Do you know? Yeah.
It was something like that.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big jump in terms of percentage, but in real world application, I don't know. We talked about this last week. Like, what is that number?
Yeah.
That is where the anxiety goes away.
Well, the other thing is that I think they use that extra power for the acceleration as well. So the new Ludicrous is now the new high bar,
Right.
the new Ludicrous mode. So the S can now go from 0 to 60 in, I believe, 2.5 seconds. What?
2.5 seconds.
What?
Yeah, that makes it.
That's
there's-
like Marty McFly level territory.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think I was laughing because I'd seen this story and I'm driving across the Bay Bridge and Northern California. There's so much money in Northern California. It's really hard to, if you don't live in a particularly wealthy section of the United States, it's really hard to describe. Like, I no longer get excited about Teslas. Like, Tesla Roadster will still perk me up a little bit because they're so rare. But there's so many like $100,000 cars that are daily driven around here. But I was laughing because there was a Tesla Model S, a Tesla Model X, and then another Tesla came up behind me on the Bay Bridge this morning.
They're searching you out, Patrick. Why are they chasing you?
Probably because I've said unflattering things about Tesla at various times. I mean, they're awesome cars, but like they're just, I'm amazed. The thing that always blows my mind is like there's not more people getting all high school inside of them and having wrecks with them.
Yeah.
Because if you've never actually been in a car the P100D is now one of the 3 fastest cars on the planet.
Well, it's the fastest production car.
Yeah. There's like a Ferrari, there's a short run Ferrari and a short run Porsche,
Exactly.
like a 918 and the LaFerrari.
Yep.
So this is like
La Ferrari.
Yeah.
Is the worst
both of which-
name for a Ferrari ever.
Both of which you cannot buy anymore.
I mean, you can if you can find somebody willing to sell them.
Used.
Yeah.
You can buy used.
But, we're looking at a car that's like $119,000 cash that will do 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. Like, is going to have a ridiculous quarter-mile time. Like, I'm still delighted that there aren't more people's, like, teenage children running these into bridge embankments at 300 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Just because if you've never been in a car that fast, it is terrifying until you get used to it.
There's
And
a
then it's-
video in the premium section of Norm riding in the Model X, I think it is, and they hit ludicrous speed, and him just going, oh, just like losing his ability to speak for a second as it accelerates through.
The last Ludicrous speed was famous for if you put your phone against the seat and floored it, the phone would just stay there from the G-forces. What I want to know is, what's the limit to this? I mean, 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds seems insane to me. I can't believe that the tires don't peel out and that you can actually accomplish this. What's the actual fastest speed a production car could go 0 to 60?
Oh, it depends on how close you can get a production car to a Formula One car, probably.
Okay, so what's a Formula One 0 to 60?
Well, the tires gets, I think it's like 1.5 seconds or something.
Okay.
Sub 2 seconds. Mm-hmm. It's been a long time since I've looked at something like
Sub
that.
2, though, we think.
It's, I mean.
but those tires last for what, like 40 laps? So
Yeah. I mean.
100 miles.
Yeah. And they're, they're like this wide.
Yeah, and flat.
And flat, right? Because they're basically designed to be sticky, and do nothing else, like drag tires,
Yeah.
right? They're very, very. At some point, you have to have this super evolved, ridiculous piece of engineering just to keep the tires from breaking loose. I'm sure they'll get it faster. I mean, it's crazy to look at this, right? Because like a P90D all-wheel drive is like $76,000. The P90D. That's the souped up one. The performance one is $99,000, and then for another $20,000, you get up to 315 miles.
The $20,000 is to upgrade your existing car.
Right.
If you haven't taken ownership, it's $10,000.
Well, if you look at the price list on the webpage, the P90D performance is $99,000. The P100D is $119,000.
So I'll be cynical and say that I think this is just a money play. Like, I mean, beyond, like, no one really needs ludicrous mode. I mean, maybe for on-ramps. Like, it's great to get up to speed. I don't know. Like when are you going to actually
really,
use this?
the hardcore fans of Spaceballs need ludicrous mode.
Sure, but how many of those people are left? We're a dwindling group.
I mean, it's you look at this, right? You go from like the P90D 4.2 seconds, the P90D performance 3.0 seconds, and then 2.5 seconds on the P100D. I mean, yeah, it probably is a money play. Like, I don't know how many people. It's the office I work out of, the Hack 5 offices, the warehouse is up in Richmond, and they ship a lot of cars out of Richmond. So like about every 2 weeks I see another, I happen to stumble across another tractor trailer load of Teslas. Like, I'm wondering, where are all these cars going? Like, what's the saturated market for a $100,000 automobile? Because a big part of the announcement that Tesla made is like, people buying the Tesla S and the Tesla X is what's going to make the Model 3 possible. And it's like, because so bring more performance electric vehicles to America, buy a $100,000 car now. Like, it's the weirdest press release I've seen in a long time.
It just tells me that is actually an incentive, or I mean, it is an incentive, but it's also something that their research has shown existing owners are proud of, that they're proud of being a part of this movement that will allow a more affordable electric car to even exist.
Right.
You know, for what I mean,
we're still
whatever.
in the area where people are acting like Kickstarter backers of the Tesla right now. The ones that own it, they're like, I have the original version of this, and I think that's got to fade in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
I am curious though. So as somebody that's plunked down the money for the Model 3, on reserve, what do you want to see in it? Do you want to see the 100D come standard? Is that overkill for you?
What do you mean standard? Like that's just what you get? No. I mean, no. I'll be excited for. Like I love golf carts. You know that just the idea of having instant torque at all, having an electric motor at all, I think is thrilling enough. I'm not. I don't need 2.5 second acceleration. That's insane.
Well, what about the range?
You don't need it yet.
I don't need it yet. I know it's like that could come later.
Wait, but does the 315 mile range make a difference to you versus the 200?
No,
whatever?
honestly, I've feared, as I said last week, I've feared electric cars for the time being because they're 50, maybe 100 miles range. But once you get to 200, I feel like that's the radius that I personally need. I could get to Santa Cruz and back, or I could get maybe to Tahoe where I could safely, like where I'm going to stay, and I can really do a solid charge up and then come home. The whole concept of driving across country in an electric car still, even with the 300 mile range, that still seems, although with the supercharger network, they're trying to pitch that as plausible and easy. I don't know what that would feel like because you're not stopping to fill up. You're stopping to stay for an hour every time.
We should ask Adam when he gets back because he's on a road trip right now, a long road trip. And I'd be interested to see if, man, that pigeon really freaks me out.
He's got construction gear
He
now.
is like up in my grill. Pigeon. Was that wasn't a pigeon, that was a person? That was creepy to me.
Just wanted to point out before we leave this that the Model X is the 0 to 60 on the SUV is sub 3 seconds too.
Sure,
Wow.
because if you need to get to soccer practice,
right.
Let's go.
I think I'd call it a station wagon or maybe a crossover.
Yeah, it's fine. Crossover.
I don't think as somebody who just took a Honda CRV over 100 miles of gravel and dirt road in rural Utah, chasing dinosaur quarries with a 4-year-old. I don't think I'd, like a Suburban, an Outback with 10 inches of clearance. That's, I'll call that an SUV. I don't think this is a little too low to the ground for me to consider it a sport utility vehicle.
It's a fat S.
All right, let's move beyond Tesla on that note. Let's talk about the big deploy in Android because Norm's not here to you guys talk about iPhone
Great.
only.
You guys
let's
can
talk about
nerd out. Go on.
Nougat that just came out. I just loaded it up. I got the OTA yesterday and been playing with it. It's not dramatically different from the final developer preview. In fact, I think it's the exact same thing. Patrick, have you gotten Nougat on
I
a
have
phone?
not yet.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk. So the big, they revamped notifications. They're much more streamlined. They're much more iPhone-esque, and they're going in that direction. I'm not going to talk about that at all. What is interesting and what the focus has been on is on the split screen. So now I'm going to just demo it for Jeremy so that people don't look at my phone during the podcast. It's easy to swipe up and do split screen and do text. So what I actually did to test this out is I did show notes for this show using split screen.
It's
so I'd have Google.
It's a vertical split screen. We should point out.
Yeah, I mean it orients based off of
cool.
your phone
okay.
orientation.
That's neat.
So I can rotate it. So I had a Google Doc open and would go to various websites in the split screen, but it was barely useful. And I have a 6P, which is a pretty big screen.
Useful, choppy processor wise, or
no, it wasn't choppy processor wise.
Just because the windows are so small.
It's just small.
Yeah.
You just run out of area.
Yeah.
And then then you spend most of your time just scrolling.
Yeah.
So my finger was getting tired.
Right, dude.
That was about as whiny as I can get about a new tech.
But
My finger was getting tired. Is that better?
I imagine it's got a use case, right? If you want to copy and paste between apps, it makes it a little simpler.
It was pretty effective when I was working on a document and going back and forth between websites, I have to say.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see split screen more on the tablets.
Is there any dragging between windows? That kind of thing? No. Okay.
Not at this point. It's really on the developers, though, because there's still only a few apps that really work well in that split screen mode. And I haven't gotten to the point where I was trying out, the Google Duo, the FaceTime app, and doing something in the app at the same time and multitasking that way.
Oh, okay.
Where I think it would actually be useful. But I've never approached my phone as I do with my laptop or desktop in that way.
Until now.
But I have to say, Nougat has been great so far. Relatively stable. Android did also announce they're going to be doing many more regular updates for the betas coming out too. So you can expect almost a release a month coming up for the betas, which I'm really excited about. I mean, most of the updates in the past were 3 months, maybe you would get one.
Right.
So I'm excited for them to just iterate on this. But what I see is a streamlining of Android. I tried out Google Duo, which I'll talk about later in what we've been testing. It's super lightweight. And seems like with the notifications, it's gone a lot more streamlined. I'm excited for what this means.
Do you think they'll ever do a complete revamp of Android where they just refresh the UI kind of like iOS 4 was, or maybe just a rethought, maybe even getting rid of the whole Java core at the base of it?
It's hard to imagine where we are now because it's almost like they're too far.
Yeah.
For them to just scrap everything. And I think the real struggle is that there's so many phones with different versions of Android on the market. Even with this OTA rollout, we're talking about a very small percentage of phones are going to be on this. So they have to worry about carrying the weight of all of these past versions of Android way back. I think that's going to make it hard to just scrap everything and go back to original.
I think the processors would make it easier, though.
You think?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you look at sort of the Android distribution or what sort of, if you're talking about 10% of actively used phones being on Marshmallow or something like that, at some point they can just draw a line in the sand because most of the older phones are never going to get any meaningful updates. They're not getting any security updates.
Yeah.
The smaller phone vendors aren't doing them. Even if the smaller phone vendors are doing them, there's a question whether or not your carrier ever gets around to releasing it. I think that would make it fairly easy for them to draw a line in the sand.
Because there's always players that want you to get the new phone.
Yeah.
The processors are getting faster and faster, so at some point, backwards compatibility won't be too much of a stretch. Same way that OS X did it when they had to support the old stuff. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't see the line in the sand coming. In terms of all the rumors, there's no indication that that's coming.
Yeah.
But one thing we haven't covered that we've talked about was the anniversary update. We've never talked about it post. We didn't talk about it after we put it on our computers. Did you put it on?
No, I haven't put it on yet.
Neither have I.
I've got...
Maybe that's why we did talk about it.
That's only because I have seen a couple issues with it. Small things, like there's an app for VR called Big Screen, and this major new feature of it where you can stream audio to your friends, that was broken with the anniversary update. They fixed it, but it was just okay, that's an issue with it. I'll just wait till the dust settles.
I have a super old webcam, and it wasn't designed to work with the anniversary update. They've had a lot of problems with webcams, so that's why I didn't do it. Have you used anniversary?
Using it some on one of the machines. My two laptops haven't updated to it yet. One of them is when I restart this, it'll update to the anniversary edition. Microsoft Edge finally getting extensions, which is nice because I finally started running an ad blocker on one of my older systems. And everybody at home can laugh, but I've always been I make my money off of advertising. I feel like I'd pay the advertising tax, but it's amazing to realize how much cruft is running in the background, especially in terms of really badly written sort of
it's painful
tracking apps. It was I expected a performance improvement, but it was like hitting Ludicrous speed. After driving a 1956 Volvo, it was disturbing to realize how much the advertising and a lot of the tracking applications that are kind of running in the background, the kind of stuff that you find out about if you run Ghostery, for example. And you're just there's 27 different things running in the background of this single tab, and I have 125 tabs open because I have research issues.
So let's talk about this for a second, because like this whole like whitelist my site because I notice you're using an ad blocker, it's blocking my ads, blah blah blah.
Right.
The workarounds for it beyond whitelisting, which I hate for a lot of these sites because I don't trust the ads that are running on them to be safe, is like pay our subscription.
Yeah.
Which is fine on the surface. But one thing I came up against the other day, I'm like, there's no way they make $5 off of me in terms of ads by me paying the subscription. I would pay the normal freight. Like, let me pay you what you would make off of me in ads. They know that number.
It's an interesting idea.
Well, microtransactions as an idea has been floating around for 20 years. 15 years maybe. But I don't think anybody's ever figured out a really good mechanism for it. And I also think part of the issue with implementing microtransactions is because click fraud is so rampant. They need to figure out a way to deal with click fraud before they're willing to do microtransaction fraud.
Sure. I mean, the New York Times sort of has the model in the, like, you get the 10 free articles. Like,
Right.
I would pay for some number of articles if they like were at least upfront and transparent about what they're actually garnering for me from the ads. And I would pay a premium for it. But I just don't believe they make $5 off of me in ads. Like, I just know that market is imploding.
Well, they may not care whether or not you believe that. They just that may be the reasonable amount that they are willing to charge, or I mean,
Maybe I don't care about visiting their site.
A friend of mine.
That was petty. Sorry.
No. it was a friend of mine was selling advertisements for a very large media website a few years ago, and they had these little tiny ads that showed up sort of on like the right side of the page, let's say, and then they had the bigger ads that showed up, kind of underneath, kind of broke the article up, and the little tiny ads where they could fit 4 of them over in the corner had a 70 or 80% better return on performance than the big ads. And one of he was, talking to somebody, and the guy's like, yeah, look, I'm from company X, and we don't buy anything smaller than, this by this in terms of banner ads, period. It's our image. And the guy's like, so I can increase your performance by a minimum of 4x, but you don't care. And you can spend half as much, get a 4x improvement, and you don't want it because you have an image to maintain. It's like, it's the way our company works. And it's, the way companies work, it's amazing to hear some of the justifications for how decisions are made about stuff like that. And it's it may just be like if they're paying a 5% VIG to the credit card company or a 3% VIG to the credit card company.
I like how you call it a VIG.
It is a VIG. It's a vigorish. It's it's a taste. If they're paying like, they have to implement that whole system. They have to pay a percentage to the credit card company. They have to deal with, I would like to see that. I would love to be able to sort of set up an account where I paid per article, and newspapers would probably make a fortune off of me because I'll read one article and then I'll read 17 more.
Well, yeah, but you might, but some people might not. Like there's a bag tax in San Francisco where you have to pay like a dime if you want to have a bag with your lunch.
Yeah.
And people won't take the bag because that's 10 cents. So that's just like, doesn't matter how much it is. If you're paying anything, people won't do it. And so I think that might deter people from using the website in a way that they don't want, So,
I partially bring it up because on Mother Jones, again, I have a podcast on the site. They did a big investigative journalism piece, and they wrote an article about how much it cost for them to do that piece. That was $350,000.
Loved that article.
And then they wrote how much they generated from ads from a piece that they got 1 million hits.
Yeah.
And it was $5,000.
Yeah.
And so they were like, hey, we're actually going to go a different way. But that transparency really shifted this idea of what those ads are actually worth. And it actually made me want to keep the ad blocker on more because the value to the company on the other side ain't that much.
Yeah.
I wish I had a different mechanism sometimes.
I mean, it's interesting, an article that just came up on TechMeme this morning is Google's essentially saying that it's going to devalue the search ranks for really bad interstitial ads. They're going to start basically penalizing your search ranks.
Especially if you do the pop-up ads on
That's
mobile.
huge, right?
That's interesting because I would think that would kind of work itself out.
It's interesting. You would think it works itself out, but when you're looking at a lot of the major media websites, they are all around. In some cases, they have just turned into the story is an excuse to see how many ads they can get through there, and if the ad pops, they don't really care. There's an interesting. There's a fine line between we are driving away our audience, versus we don't care about driving away our audience because we get so many click-throughs because we have the best, Google search results because we've been around for 20 years and we have a whole team of people that are working to keep our rankings really good.
I don't know. I heard Malcolm Gladwell put it this way. He was describing Folgers coffee, which used to be really good coffee.
Right.
And he's like, at some point there, like somebody said, oh, we have 100% coffee. Let's just make it 93% and see if anyone notices. And then no one notices, and then they take it down a notch. And pretty soon they're at like 60% coffee, and they have really shitty coffee now, and no one drinks it. And like they lose all sorts of market share. And I think there is that slope for these ads.
Yeah.
And so I maybe myopically believe what you're saying, that it'll fix itself. But I'm glad that Google's putting a little bit of pressure on them.
Yeah. Interstitials that show a pop-up that cover the main content, that display a standalone interstitial that the user has to dismiss. Okay, so this is PC Mag, this is Forbes, this is CNET, this is this is all the major websites right now. Using a layout where the above the fold portion of the page appears similar to a standalone interstitial, but the original content has been inlined underneath the fold. It's a really good article on this on Search Engine Land. This is a big deal because all of these companies thrive by their by search. Traffic from search. It's going to be crazy to see.
There'll be some new thing.
SEO, man, right? It's a whole industry.
Yeah, it's a huge industry. It's an important industry. But it's like part of the reason these ads come up is because they're the ones that advertisers are willing to pay the most for. So this is going to get ugly.
Yeah, it's going to get ugly. This is the optimistic section, though. This is the optimistic. So I'm going to take us to the land of gaming where everything is okay and all right at all times.
Where things aren't going that well.
Yeah, our first story is things aren't going that well. Let's talk about how Pokemon is losing a shit ton of users. There's a report in ours that came out that they shed 10 million users in the last month, which actually doesn't, it sounds like a lot, but when you do the percentages, it's not that much.
Well, what is the percentage? Because I know
they
it
went
broke
from 45 million to somewhere close to 40, because I couldn't get the chart large enough to actually accurately look at the numbers, and they weren't using real numbers, but it was they've gone from 45 million users at peak to
That's it?
30 something million users.
I thought it was more than that. Wow.
That is a ton of users. What are you talking about?
World of Warcraft had 10 million, 11 million at their peak, and that's an online MMO that costs you whatever bucks a month to play. This was a free mobile game.
They pulled out $270 million in the first 5 weeks on Pokemon Go.
Insane. Insane. Yeah, I know it broke that record. Wow.
I think it's bringing out all the haters being like, this game was stupid all along. The game that I invested 50 hours of my life in. Chill out. But I do think the burn rate isn't that atypical for a mobile game. It's actually less.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Because I heard it was something like 50% off your peak in the next month is usually what's normal.
Is it that good? I would think 90% would go away, honestly. Because, everybody tries these games, especially the free-to-play ones. And if they're in the news, everyone's checking them out. But then I would just think most people have to drop it and the hardcore stay. I know that it has there were reports of it actually pushing people to the DS games.
Yeah, so I think that's a big question if it's going to pump up sales of the DS games that are out in just a couple months.
Oh, yeah, I guarantee it will. This has brought Pokemon to the mainstream for sure.
Yeah, my kid talks about Pokemon now. I don't like it.
You can, if you go on Thingiverse, you can now 3D print capture guides. So that you print them, you put them on top of your phone, and if you move your finger along this little guide, you'll always get a perfect capture. Yep.
That's why why Thingiverse was invented, for that express purpose. Thank you. I'm still playing. I'm level 17.
Wow.
Inching my way along.
You could always just download the script and let it run. That's what a friend of mine did. Let the script run for 24 hours. He basically, he told the phone he was walking around Central Park and just let it run in the background for like 48 hours and went from like level 0 to level 23.
Does it capture Pokemon for you?
Apparently, I'm not really, or maybe it was just exercising the Pokemon he had.
Oh,
I'm like keeping such a distance from this game. Like
You haven't played it.
somebody showed my kid one of the games. I just wanted to, just like no.
For a couple weeks, that was what, like, it was an activity for us. Like,
Yeah.
my kids would say, "Can we go for a Pokemon walk?" And we would go walk around the neighborhood catching Pokemon. I mean, honestly, it wasn't a bad use of our time.
I'm one level I'm down with that. On the other level, like, you know, my kids will play reading games or you know.
Absolutely. No, my daughter's favorite activity is math questions, but she also digs on catching the Pokemon, and she knows. The weird thing was she actually knew some of the Pokemon, and I didn't know how. But I guess she's watched it on Netflix.
We were cleaning up my kid's art table, and he had Pokemon trading cards. And I was like,
Where did you get these?
yeah, I did that. I did that 80s thing. Where did these come from? I was just confounded.
Well, I mean, I was when Pokemon came out, I was old enough to look at this and be like, "Oh, wow, this is a toy ad pretending to be a cartoon." And so there's certain cartoons like that where like I work really hard to keep them far away from my children because
Our parents said that. G.I. Joe, Transformers, GoBots, all that stuff.
And look at us
all
now.
that
They
stuff
were
was
right.
after. Like I was out of the cartoon age by the time all that stuff came out.
Really? Are you older than you look?
I'm older than I look, and also I lived in a where it's now the third largest school district in Pennsylvania. But when I lived there, we still had like rural route delivery in the part of Pennsylvania.
What's that?
That's where they don't bother to number houses. The mail person just knows it's your house.
That's hilarious. Wow, you grew up in the 50s.
No, I grew up in this case the 80s, but it was like we're like an hour north of Philadelphia, and that was still pretty empty.
It makes it even more impressive that you're a long-time technology reporter.
Well, I was also my dad made me learn. My dad looked at my handwriting and realized that like his handwriting was incomprehensible but beautiful. Mine was incomprehensible and looked like a drunken chicken had shat on the page. So he basically made me learn how to type. He's like, you know, I nearly didn't get out of high school because people couldn't read my handwriting. You're going to learn how to type, and I learned how to type, and then I learned how to, you know, I started working on an IBM. Compact Portable 2, first an IBM Model AT, then a Compact Portable 2, and then started building Windows machines, and then for a very short period, and then started on the Macintosh ride. My first portable Mac was a Duo 280C. I had like 12 megabytes of storage, man.
What year was that?
That was like 90, 92, somewhere around there.
I want to see the photo essay of all of your computers like,
It's,
lined up. That'd be amazing.
I would do that. I love that stuff. That would be fun. My first computer was a PC Junior, which was a short-lived IBM experiment with a wireless keyboard.
Ooh, wireless.
Yeah.
Wireless keyboard.
That was a bold move back then.
Yep, 3-channel sound, 16 colors. It's what the Tandy computer was based on. So it was pretty high tech.
I remember I would go into Radio Shack like every weekend
Yeah.
to like play on the Tandy that
Yeah.
was like in the store. All right, well, there's an updated version of the Tandy that's coming out September 7th. It's called the PS4.
I would be also all over that. It's just like this new NES that's coming out this fall.
Well, there is a big PlayStation event, which we talked a little bit about last week, that's on September 7th. And we got our first sneak peeks of what's coming out of that.
Is anybody other than me fascinated that Sony's dropping their announcement on the same day
Is
that
Apple? Yeah.
Apple's doing their phone announcement?
Apple
Like,
hasn't officially announced that yet, but
Yeah, it's
Okay.
going to be.
yeah,
It's going to be that day. Come on.
I hope so. It's getting close.
They're not going to like put it off a day just so Norm gets back from the
Of course not.
Arctic.
No, but it's odd they haven't announced it yet. It's what? It's less than 2 weeks now.
Yeah, it's true. But you know what we should do? Here's how you figure it out. You go try to book venues for like you call up as like a band. Be
Yeah.
like, I need Bill Graham Civic Center or like the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. And like, I'm sorry, we're booked on these days. That's how you figure it out.
Okay.
That's it. That's investigative journalism at its heart.
Wow.
Lying so you can figure out when venues are booked.
So
social engineering.
So the Slim was leaked. Is that right?
Pictures of the Slim was leaked. It looks
Slim.
slim.
I knew it.
It looks pretty different from the the first generation of the PS4. It looks kind of like almost a set-top box now instead of like a gaming console. But I guess that's the way all of them are going. The Slim doesn't really do anything for me. It's really they redesigned the controller.
Yeah, well, it's the same controllers, but it just looks a little smaller.
Yeah.
A little slimmer.
Yeah, right. Well, it's like the analog sticks. They're almost like they're hovering out below the rest of the controller.
I'm wondering if they did that with the knowledge of like PSVR coming. I know you're going to be most of the things are going to be with
weird.
the wand, but
Yeah.
if they were thinking about what the hand feel is like,
Interesting.
for the touch.
Yeah, I wonder that too. That's a good point. I wonder. The Slim interests me because our PS4 overheats. If it's in our cabinet below the TV and the door's not open, it overheats and it's just humongous. So we have these cables that kind of nudge the door out. It's a small problem. This would be a first world problem, but I'm just saying
we're beyond first world problem there. Like we're in
this
the
is like San Francisco
like-
problem. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know what I'll be able to get for the old PS4, but if it's anywhere near
Several dollars.
yeah, that's right. If it's anywhere near, if it makes sense to upgrade, I might do that.
All right, because I don't think I wasn't particularly excited about the Slim coming out. I mean, we wanted to see a full refresh, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely waiting a full year to do the console upgrade until we see the next generation.
So there's the PlayStation 4.5. There's the next generation Xbox.
Xbox S, Xbone S, whatever it's called.
And those are basically,
0.5s.
Yeah.
The new Xbox does 4K video.
Yeah. And does Blu-ray playback, which
Yeah.
I know, but for some reason I just could not get that into my head. And Robert Heron was like, we're talking to AVXL. He's like, no, it plays Blu-rays now. And I'm like, okay, sorry. Like, my bad.
I think it's going to confuse a lot of people. I think some people are going to expect that to play games at 4K,
Yeah.
and they're going to be surprised when all they're getting is 1080.
Well, I do think the Slim's going to do well just because of if the VR bundles go. I think the Slim will fly off the shelf.
Yeah.
But we have to kind of wait and see. Like we still are waiting for some of the bigger VR announcements to come out of PlayStation. So that's what I'm waiting for on the 7th. I guess we might have to break into these.
What are you talking about?
To like divide and conquer and get out to some of these September 7th things. Norm's not around.
Oh, you think we can get into the Apple one?
Sure. I got recognized yesterday at the Cal Academy as being on the Tested podcast. It was weird.
Oh, wow. I wrote Apple like a couple of years ago, and I said, hey, I'm from Tested. I'd love to come to your event. And they wrote back, and they said, sorry, but tell me more about Tested.
Oh.
So I told them about it, and no call yet. We'll see.
Maybe you have to sign it Mr. Jeremy Williams for the respect.
so they know I'm married.
One update on a story Jeremy alerted us to. A few weeks ago, you talked about
I was in
going
Pittsburgh.
to Pittsburgh and seeing the Uber self-driving cars.
Well, no, I was told about them by an Uber driver. And I almost didn't believe him.
Was the Uber driver pissed?
Yeah, he seemed no. In fact, he wasn't. I was surprised by this whole experience, and he actually picked me up in a pickup truck, and so he actually had a back seat, but I sat up front with him. So it was a very unique experience to begin with. And then I started saying we had a long ride to the airport, so I was talking about how eventually Ubers are going to be self-driving, and he said, yeah, well, we're doing that here already. I was like, well, I would have heard about that, but he said that they've had cruises mounted with the rigs driving around Pittsburgh for the past several months, and sure enough, I got online and I checked it out, and that's in fact been the case. And now they've announced that beginning, is it this year?
I think it's 2017. No, this month. Sorry, this month.
That's interesting that you'll be able to drive in a self-driving Uber car in Pittsburgh for free.
Yeah,
Like
right. You can order it, and it's sort of like the lottery.
Yeah,
I
right.
think.
But if you score a self-driver, it's a free ride. Now, I don't know why they're doing a free ride. That alarms me a little bit. It's like, well,
Didn't one of the Volvos kind of squish the CEO during the announcement?
Is that right?
Somebody said they had video of it now I have to find it, but hold on.
I have to think that I've seen self-driving cars on YouTube and they're cautious. So I have to think if you get one, you're signing up for a slow ride. Like you're going to be pulling out really carefully. Everything's to the letter. You're not going over the speed limit.
But
and
there's limits to that.
No
because
chances are taken.
If you drive too slow, that's dangerous too.
That's true. So they have to push it a little bit. But I don't think you're going to get the guy who's like, get me to the theater in 10 minutes. And I'll double your tip.
Do you think it's going to be over a prescribed small geographic area too, just because they are going to want to test it where they
have scanned?
Yeah, they've scanned.
Yeah, well, dude was telling me and he had this information because he actually gives rides to the people from.
We're going to call him unnamed source now. just to be
Yeah, the
responsible.
Uber
car
driver.
owners.
Like, I don't know. He knows people because whatever. And
People talk.
He was saying that their scanning system doesn't even use GPS because they have scanned so accurately every millimeter of the pavement. They know exactly where they are to the millimeter. So you're right. They're going to want to do it wherever they've scanned. So maybe that's just downtown. I don't know, but it's coming up. I mean, imagine we're going to see some videos of this pretty soon, and that's really interesting.
I think it's going to be fascinating. I almost want to fly home just to like wander around Pittsburgh and be like, I'm going to take an Uber from here to here.
Will there be a driver behind the wheel?
Yes,
Or
legally
Ubers?
there
Yes.
has to be.
Okay.
They are not like level 4 driverless. Have you seen the chart, like the levels?
The
Yeah.
NISTA put out a chart. Yeah.
They're aiming for level 4, but currently there has to be a driver behind the steering wheel, prepared to take over at any moment.
Excellent. Well, that's what I want. Someone to talk to. But they have also announced that they are purchasing a bajillion Volvos that are self-driving.
Weren't they trying to buy Teslas and Tesla said no?
That's what dude was telling me. Trying to buy Teslas. And then I've read online that they fell out, that they couldn't get a deal, so they went to Mercedes. Now the new articles are saying they've gone to Volvo. And that's a signed deal.
Yeah.
Maybe those are the ones to ride in because they're so safe. They're going to take them up to speed. No.
Yeah, Volvo is super safe.
Yeah, super safe. So
Yeah.
these are going to be the ones they get into wrecks.
But
in.
this is 5 years from now. Like the real official rollout, it sounds like it's 5 years from now.
Would you go get in the self-driving one in Pittsburgh?
In 5 years?
No. I mean,
Yeah.
if we were in Pittsburgh right now, would you try to get in one of those cars?
Yes, absolutely. Because I would feel obligated to cover it for tested.
Forget the covering it for testing.
Why wouldn't you?
I just want to do it.
Yeah,
like
right.
it sounds so much fun. Have you been in one yet? A self-driving?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, can you say what it was?
No, it was a thing at like CES a few years ago. It was very early. It was very primitive. It was like being in one of those. Speaking of slow, it was like being in one of those little electric kiddie cars, and it was like 3 miles an hour. I mean, this was years ago.
Yeah.
It's really unsettling. I find the self-parking cars, like the self-parallel parking mode in cars, really unsettling. In part because my dad and my grandfather were salesmen at different points, driving 50 to 100,000 miles a year. So driving is something I derive a lot of pleasure from. And it's also very surreal to watch like the machine park itself.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I love the idea of my car being able to drive. I hate flying. I'll drive to Vegas for CES instead of flying whenever I can, but it's a 9-hour drive. So the idea of the car driving itself for 9 hours is fascinating to me. But I also remember when one of the most brilliant people in the history of the planet invented, the stand-up scooter that was going to change the way everybody moved in cities, and it would be impossible for anyone who had an accident. And somebody managed to dive off of one and have a head injury inside like the first week. So I am curious to watch.
Wasn't that President Bush?
No.
He thought
It was me like 2 weeks ago here in the tested office. I can tell you that.
But I mean, I look. We all are hip deep or ankle deep or neck deep or hair follicle deep in technology. And the reason for example, I have a job doing tech thing is because so often it does not work the way it's supposed to. Which is kind of a bummer if a video game crashes, but the stakes are considerably higher. So
Yeah.
It's,
However, that said, like there's a lot of technology in cars now. And
Yes.
typically it works very well.
yes, but it's also very low level technology that doesn't have a lot of importance. You know what I mean? Like as somebody who's been mostly driving like a stone dumb, like the most sophisticated computer in my truck is the
laptop in your backpack?
yes, followed by my phone, followed by my MP3 player, followed by this $9 chip PC, distantly followed by the anti-lock brake system controller. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And that's pretty brute force stuff. That's pretty simple. And I understand that they're going to be able to throw clock cycles, you know what I mean? And so much computing power today at autonomous driving, but it's still kind of mind-boggling to think of, a vehicle learning enough or the system learning enough to deal with we drive here in the Bay Area. Like I started driving at like 15 or 16, through Newark. Like my first drive with my learner's permit was to pick up family on like a Thursday or Friday night from Newark Airport, right? Full blown, like 6-lane insanity. And then I moved, and I thought the worst traffic could get would be like, drunk people in Manhattan on a Saturday night. And then or the Jersey Shore. And then I got to see an average Tuesday morning in San Francisco where like people don't understand turn signals.
Yeah, we
and
suck
they
at
do
driving.
randomly. Well, yeah, it's just like, I'm going to change lanes and decelerate while not using my turn signal. Then I'll ignore that stop sign because I have to make up the time I lost for going, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, like we've talked about before on the show, how there's going to be an intermediate period. Well, once everything is self-driving, then they can all mesh, communicate, and it'll be a lot safer.
want everything to be self-driving.
But this intermediate period where some are, and they have to respond to the human drivers, that's even more difficult.
Yes. The uncanny valley of autonomous
The
vehicles.
valley that I have heard about, a lot of people that have been in self-driving cars a lot say, is that you have this period of unsettling where it's going to be weird, and then you're kind of go to, a lot of them describe being like amazed. You're like, wow, this is working.
Right.
And then it just gets boring.
Yeah, I feel like
And I
we're
wanna
gonna
get
hit
to
that too.
boring.
Me too.
And that's why I want to go for a ride.
I think there's something about people like us that remember 300 baud modems we just since we saw
Cars without seatbelts.
This is turning into the old man cast, not the
I
bunch of dads.
think there's a perspective shift between our generation and the next, where like we can't imagine cars being self-driving as well as they need to be,
right?
Because we know the limitations of computers. But those are like an onion; just the layers are peeling away, and it's becoming more and more possible to a degree that's hard for us to even fathom. Whereas our kids, they don't know how this stuff works; they just expect it to. And I hope and believe optimistically that within 5 years we're going to be able to see that.
I hope.
I hope so too.
Hey, look, an optimistic note.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, imagine like telling the car to go to Zion and picking up a copy of War and Peace and then just going offline for the next 13 hours. I mean, I'm down with that concept.
I'd be pretty happy just getting to the grocery store right now.
What's weird is that if you look at the Model 3, it just has that one dash in the center. Mm-hmm. It almost looks like a self-driving car.
Right.
I mean, and that's, who knows?
Well, any other technology news you want to cover before we move on?
I did. That was too positive because I want to mention one story while we're on the topic of something that happened to Tesla. There was somebody going on a test drive in France this week, and the car burst into flames. This is a Model S. Dude was on a test drive with a Tesla employee in the car.
That's always awkward.
They heard a loud sound. A warning came up on the screen. They stopped the Tesla employee asked the driver to pull over, please. And then he did, and they all evacuated. Within 1 minute, the car was in flames. And within 5 minutes, the car was engulfed and completely destroyed.
And they're safe, right? Let's start there.
Everybody's safe. Everybody's safe.
And is it something happened to the batteries?
Nobody knows. Like Tesla heard about this is just a matter of days ago. Tesla's gone out, they're investigating, they promised to share all the information soon. But something must have punctured into the battery, like through the safety wall into the battery. Bad news. Yeah,
I also saw, I think Elon Musk tweeted out a story and a picture of a different Tesla driver that was in an accident, and it was gnarly kind of accident, but had talked about how how the structure that they put in the Tesla saved his life. So I think we're just going to have to get used to those stories. There's going to be a lot of those stories coming up.
Well, and it's also, I mean, it's a new technology. It's unproven. It's people are really paranoid about it. I mean, people still don't realize how many automotive accidents are annually and how much they've dropped in the last couple of years. I'm curious to see if that's because, or automotive fatalities. I'm curious to see if the last dip in automotive fatalities was because nobody could afford gas a couple of years ago, or if that's because the technology has made the cars so much better. Because I mean, I've been in crashes in like 50s era cars, and I've been in crashes in modern crumple zone design cars, and the experience is radically different. I had a deer jump out in front of my Volvo in an industrial part of New Jersey a few years ago, and it was amazing to see like the car was completely screwed up. The deer, fortunately passed away. Like the deer started to get up and like, oh God, I'm going to have to kill this wounded deer with 2 broken legs. With what do I have? Great, I have a tire iron in my trunk. This is going to be a great memory.
Oh my God.
Well, it's not like I'm running around with a slug loaded 12 gauge in the back of my Volvo in North Jersey.
And it died.
And it literally put its head up and looked at me, and then its tongue came out and the head hit the ground, and I was like, well, that was an experience. Wow. But it's amazing how much safer all vehicles are at this point compared to what they used to be.
Real-time fact-checking Patrick Norton statements. They are on decline. U.S. I'm just looking at U.S. data. There are about a little over 30,000, and there was a downtick during the recession.
Okay.
That is probably attributable, though it's not 100%, to gas prices.
Okay.
And maybe the employment rate.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say.
thereof.
I mean, if there's less people commuting, like, is it because of gas prices? Is it because of employment? I think that's hard to tease out.
Okay.
But they have declined, at least I think since 2013, it looks like about 3%. There was a slight uptick in 2012 when there's probably a surge in employment there.
Are Teslas that low to the ground? I mean, I haven't measured like the gap between the bottom of a Tesla and the ground.
Well, the center of gravity is extremely low.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the center of gravity is about weight. It's not about the physical distance.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and it's a good question.
Because it's like, gas tanks are at the bottom of the car too, but you don't hear a lot of stories about gas tank punctures leading to car fires.
You don't hear a lot of punctures for Teslas either. I mean, I want to know what they ran
like
over.
3, yeah. Like there's been like 3 reported cases at this point.
Yeah.
Well, when Elon's on the show next week, we'll ask him. It'll be cool.
I think we have Norm on the line here.
Oh, really?
He's going to bring a message
Norm, how you doing?
of importance.
This is Only a Test is supported by Citi Cards with Android Pay. Listening on your phone? Now you can pay while you listen using the same device. Just tap and go. Download the Android Pay app on Google Play or visit citi.com/Android Pay to get started. Android Pay is available for eligible Citi consumer credit and debit cards.
Now it's time for a moment of science. So, on that same optimistic trail we've been on, let's talk about the horrible flooding in Louisiana.
Oh my gosh.
It's been stark, right? And most climate scientists have been very hesitant to attribute any one storm to climate change. But now the flooding is starting to ramp up. There's evidence that this is really linked. And there was an incredible story in Gizmodo. It's probably the best thing I read all week about South Florida and the problem they're facing with potential flooding with sea level rise. And particularly, they went out into the Everglades and looked at how the saltwater penetration into like the marsh area is changing the dynamics of what flood is going to look like in the area. And then you talk to one researcher that was like, when we talk about sea level rise, you kind of get this picture that it's going to slowly rise by like, a few meters over the course of the century, like somewhere between 3 and 6 feet is what they roughly say. And you picture, it's over like 50 years. That's, a few inches a year. That's a big deal, but it doesn't give you that. But what one researcher said is like, we're watching sea level rise here happening right now. And we've monitored a foot rise over the last like 30 to 40 years.
A vertical foot? Not a foot onto the shore. A vertical
foot.
Yeah.
And he talks about it as coming in pulses. And the pulses create huge problems because then you get this saline water penetrating into the marsh much deeper, causes all sorts of degradation of the life that acts as sort of a seawall for you there. And as that stuff breaks down and dies, now you create all of these ecosystem of problems that erodes your sort of protection against the next pulse. And it was terrifying reading this thing. It was terrifying because it was like sea level rise when they always talk about 2050.
Yeah.
And I see those maps of like all the airports going underwater and stuff. Like, that's still 2050. That feels far away. This is now. And this is one of those first stories I've read where I've been like, shit, this is now. Part of Florida is just going to go away. And, people make snarky comments about like, Florida, that's not so bad. It's bad.
Yeah, it's bad in general because most of the population of the planet lives fairly close to the water, usually at places where there's surprisingly long, slow grades from the ocean inland. It's flat out scary.
Yeah, and you know what was the sign? And this is the changing way of how we communicate science, a little inside baseball. The reason I knew this is a good story, I read the story on Gizmodo and I was like, wow, that was incredible. And then every trusted science journalist that I follow on Twitter tweeted out the same story over the course of the next 2 days. There are like every single one, like from the New York Times down to the freelancers were like, this is like the important piece that you're going to, of the month. So I'll put a link in the show notes and everyone can check it out. But let's change to something more positive. Something we're going to talk about in our last segment. Let us talk about Wi-Fi, our shitty Wi-Fi connections in our homes. Because there was a new study that came out of MIT about Mega Mimo. But before we get to Mega Mimo, let's talk about Mimo.
That's a Pokemon, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's Charmander.
Or an old Capcom game.
Yeah.
Patrick, you're probably familiar with Mimo when it comes to Wi-Fi.
Yes.
You want to talk about it briefly before I talk about what the actual science of what they did is?
It's Wi-Fi that sucks less by using multiple transmitters simultaneously and doing beamforming, which is the idea that you're kind of going to, use multiple antennas to direct the Wi-Fi signal towards the thing it's trying to talk to.
And the big problem with MIMO is that as the number of Wi-Fi devices come online, we set ourselves up for a lot of interference where basically people are using the same channel and frequency.
Yeah, it's messy, and then it slows down, and then people get pissed off.
So a research group out of MIT at CSAIL, which is their sort of computer science infrastructure department, actually came up with a new version of MIMO that actually prioritizes the signals so they're not sent over the same frequency at the same time. So it's essentially sort of like almost like how we've treat packets, like treating Wi-Fi signals in that same way.
Yeah.
Prioritizing access. And they were able to get an increased data throughput in their sort of test simulations of a factor of 3.6 using a sort of real world scenario where there's a ton of...
using existing wireless protocols.
Yeah.
Wow.
And using like a real world scenario where you're in like a home with a bunch of Wi-Fi devices at the same time, which is pretty amazing because this isn't a hardware move. I mean, there's probably some subtle hardware differences in some of the transmitters, but this is like about using like similar infrastructure that we have now, like a router and not changing any of our devices.
Really?
Right
So
now.
you're saying this is potentially a firmware update?
Hard to
no,
tell.
they have to change some of the transmitter things, but the idea of like you just buying a router off the shelf that has this integrated.
It also sounds like they keep saying like, they're coordinating multiple access points. So multiple access points will use the same frequency to communicate to one device. So this sounds like sort of it sounds like a cousin to the existing mesh network devices, the Amplify, the Eero, and the other ones, but with 100% more oomph, or 360% more oomph.
Is this one of those MIT incubators that are going to be...
No, it's not Media Lab. It's actually like a research unit.
Cool.
So it'll be a ways away, but the results are pretty promising. I'm going to skip the next one because Jeremy put it on there. I'm going to come back to it because
Did you read it?
It is one of the craziest backstories ever.
Oh, you know about it already.
I know about it,
All right,
and
good.
it's insane. There's a couple anniversaries. 10 years ago today, we said, Pluto, get the fuck out. 10 years ago, today, we kicked Pluto out of the solar system.
I didn't.
Your buddy Neil deGrasse played a role in that.
He had a role, but I think it's overstated how much a role he was. He was on the committee.
He says as much.
Yeah, so the real person you want to blame is Mike Brown. He's a astrophysicist at Caltech. His Twitter handle is @PlutoKiller.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I think he deserves more credit.
Sometimes you just gotta own it.
He's also the lead researcher on the team that potentially found a 10th planet in the solar system. They found sort of a mathematical probability that there's something out there.
The big one out there.
Yeah, we talked about that before. But happy anniversary, guys.
That's all you got to say about this?
Yeah, I mean,
I still
it's
feel bad for Pluto.
Why?
Because
Because Pluto the dog?
Because it's a Disney character?
Yeah.
no, I hate.
Because you grew up with that. Because of the Dave Matthews lyric, 9 planets around the sun, right? That kills you now.
Apparently, I've never actually heard that song.
So my kid, because he's grown up in a post-Pluto world,
Yeah.
only ever talks about 8 planets.
That's interesting.
And, the thing that makes me feel better about Pluto getting kicked out is we always think about these planets being nice spherical objects. And for the most part, they are. Pluto's not. It's misshapen. It's misshapen. Its orbit's all out of
Wow.
whack.
Its orbit's misshapen, too.
Yeah. It's like, it is a mutant out there.
And there's other bodies as
And
large as it
mutants
is.
don't deserve love.
No, but
Why don't you just leave it on a
we
hillside to
didn't-
die, Spartan?
I mean, we didn't actually physically send a device out there to blow it up. I mean, we just demoted it. It's fine. It's still there. No problem. On another note, NASA found something they lost this week. They sent out two spacecraft, Stereo A and Stereo B, to image solar pulses, and they lost one. They lost Stereo B for 2 years.
Wait, what are these?
They're basically like they're not satellites because they're not in orbit, but they're essentially spacecraft that were transmitting data back about imaging the sort of solar pulse arena, and they sent two versions of the same spacecraft in different directions so they could get this kind of stereo image of something together to different positions.
Right.
So one of them they lost contact with 2 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And NASA has something straight out of sci-fi called the Deep Space Network. It's a radio listening station, and they reestablished contact with it like 2 days ago. And you could watch the data come in live because it's so far away. I believe you can still do it right now. You can just they have a website set up where you can see the data coming in from the Deep Space Network. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, they're basically trying to figure out what the causes of the coronal mass ejections that disrupt communications and stuff. It's like a really cool mission, but it's also got to be awkward when a satellite a space vehicle, unmanned space vehicle, just disappears for 2 years.
And it comes back after 2 years? This is straight out of science fiction.
I guarantee you at the JPL, wherever they're monitoring newly launched spacecraft, every time something works, they say, oh my God, it's working. I mean, I can't believe that this stuff actually functions. The fact that it loses communication, I think, would be the norm.
This loops back so nicely to our conversation about self-driving vehicles.
Right, exactly.
What this information means, it's going to be really hard for them to reorient and send signals. Right now, they're just trying to establish contact with it again and make sure there's no aliens on board and stuff like that. But that's for a later podcast. We'll see. All right, now we got to talk about the one Jeremy wanted to talk about, which is we have to talk about the one Jeremy wanted to talk about. You can just tell them what the title of this is.
Oh, well, human head transplant.
Yeah. So
this is going to happen, people.
All right. All right, so this is a really weird story. So there is an Italian neurosurgeon that's working with a Chinese neurosurgeon who claims that he has transplanted a head on a chimp.
Oh, he's the same one that did this.
Monkey, sorry, not a chimp.
In China.
In China. And there's not a lot of evidence to claim what they said was successful. And now he has come out with a statement that there is a Russian man who's essentially a paraplegic, who has a really rare genetic condition.
Terminal illness,
that he's going to transplant a human head on a new body.
All right.
And the way they're going to do it is they're going to chill his head down to minus 15 C.
Along with the donor body.
Which is going to be somebody that,
that seems awfully cold.
Yeah, it's very cold. They're going to evacuate some of the fluids, we'll just say, from the donor body. And then they're going to attach it and hook up all of the arterial systems, the circulatory systems, fill it up with blood. But the real trick is going to be the spinal fusion, which is really complicated.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been taught that the brain and the spine are one, that they are intertwined such that one can't live without the other. They're going to attach his brain, to the donor's spine.
They claim they're going to attach his brain to the donor's spine.
That's it?
Yeah. I mean, I had a family member that had a traumatic head injury, and if they go into a coma, which is possible because of an epileptic condition they have, and you attach the wires to them, they don't actually show up as having brain function because their neurological system has rewired itself in a way human neurological systems aren't supposed to be able to. So there's sort of standing invitations for her to be brought in to be wired up like a lab rat, so scientists can kind of figure out what's going on there. This is non-trivial. You know what I mean? I just want to say, this is
okay. Non-trivial doesn't begin to describe what this is. It gets weirder though, and there's one place it gets really weird. So this would be a feat beyond what is
Yeah.
thought of as capable.
I mean, this is Mary Shelley Frankenstein territory. This is full on,
That's
like,
right.
this is Peter Thiel territory.
And
I
we've
mean-
identified the right thing. So the cooling of the body and like the evacuation of different fluids and putting it back in, that actually has a lot of evidence to support it. It's this spinal fusion that people don't believe at all.
Yeah.
Okay. You were about to say something.
No, I
before
mean-
I get to the really weird
I just wanted to finish-
This
Oh,
isn't
that's
even the
not
weird
even the
part.
really weird part.
I just wanted to finish the facts of the story. So that they're going to spend 2 days doing this operation.
Yeah, it's a 2-day operation.
They've raised something like $18 million.
This is where it gets weird.
And they're going to put him into a coma for 1 month after the operation in order to prohibit movement and
Right.
to allow for healing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that's a nice statement. So in January, him and his, and this guy's name is Sergio Canavero, and his colleague in China, Xiaoping Ren, published a paper article in a surgical journal in January that is one of the most bizarre pieces of science that I've read in a long time.
And, yeah,
so they
it's
talk
published.
about the project, and it's called Heaven, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
An acronym for HEAD. You better pronounce that.
No, I'm not pronouncing this acronym.
Anastomosis venture?
It's some crazy
Head
acronym.
anastomosis venture.
And he writes this thing about how heaven is going to be the beginning of, or the solution to all of the quote unquote Pandora's box of medical failures. And he goes on a 2-page rant about how the system of science we do of peer review is totally broken because people, essentially the underpinning is like, people won't fund my crazy idea. And so peer review is broken. And he starts calling out particular people in it. He calls out Zuckerberg, Sergey Brin,
What?
all of these other philanthropists that founded something called the Breakthrough Prize, because they won't support his effort to transplant a human head that no one believes will actually work. And he goes on this massive rant in a paper about how Nobel Prizes are awarded incorrectly, how the whole establishment is against him. There's a video that you put in the show notes of him talking. He's a crazy person. He appears fully crazy.
So, has anyone seen The Chimp?
No, and I couldn't find any evidence of the monkey.
This article mentions that there are stitches around its neck.
Okay.
So someone's seen the chimp.
I haven't seen a picture of the chimp. It is, all I can say, it like this paper, and I want to like put that paper up, is one of the most bizarre things I've read.
He sounds like
he is a
mad scientist.
full-on madman, as best I could tell.
But this operation's going to happen. It's scheduled for December 2017.
yeah, he's written. It's not going to happen. This isn't going to happen.
Why not?
No.
Why?
So not only do I not believe the spinal fusion science of this, I don't believe he has the $18 million. Do you think there's no reason to trust anything this guy has to say?
Okay.
I mean, this would be I imagine this is going to end up on like some Fox reality show if it does happen. That's how little I actually believe this is going to happen. But it is one of the weirdest, most confounding stories in science I think I've come across.
Yeah,
Where did you find the paper? I mean, where was it published?
It was some journal. I'm forgetting the name. It's like the Journal of Surgical Neurosurgery. I don't know.
So
that
legitimate-
can't be the name of the journal, by the way.
Right. I mean, was it a legitimate journal or was it?
Yeah, but he wrote like it's not like a research paper. He wrote an article in it, and he called it a call to arms. And it's just a complete rant. I think it's hilarious. Can't wait to get a note from him after this podcast.
As long as he doesn't show up outside your door with a satchel and
A sack full of $18 million and a saw. I'll be worried then.
Want to be a donor body?
How do you feel about head transplants now?
On a different note, I have a recommendation to tested viewers. There's an event here in San Francisco, September 21st and 22nd, called Dent the Future, which is a number of speakers on the future of space exploration coming together. Our own Simone Yetch will be there, along with a number of friends of Tested, including Mary Roach and others. It's a free event. Go check it out. Amazing lineup of speakers.
You'll be there?
Yeah, I'll probably go.
right.
I'm not speaking. I don't know anything
Right
about
on.
space. So, cool.
The VR Minute. Virtual reality this week.
let's keep the optimistic train going. Let's
Okay, oh no.
Oculus lawsuit. Let's go.
Well, there was a lawsuit in play. So ZeniMax, the parent company of id Software, former employer of John Carmack.
Creation of John Carmack, employer creation.
They
This lawsuit's been in existence for a long time.
Yeah. But there was a chance for them to settle, so they're not going to settle. They accused Oculus basically of stealing ZeniMax tech to make the Oculus Rift, and their latest statement isn't as vague. It goes as far as to explicitly say that John Carmack, while still employed at ZeniMax, took hundreds of files out of the office on a USB stick, Edward Snowden style, and never returned them or destroyed them, and used that data in order to help Oculus create the Oculus Rift. They also accuse Brendan Uribe of being implicated, and they say Palmer Luckey didn't have the technical acumen to do what he says that he did, and that his whole backstory that has been promoted of making the Oculus, the initial prototype in his mom's garage, has been fabricated. So this is going to court, and they have accused Oculus. Oculus, released a 2-sentence rebuttal, saying basically this is a one-sided description. This isn't the whole story, and we'll see you in court.
I assume this won't get to court anytime soon.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, but discovery in this case would be fascinating.
Yeah.
Because they're going to bring out all sorts of weird evidence for this.
And everyone who's been following Oculus knows that it all started at E3 like 2014.
Right.
No, it could have been that. It was like, 2012, 2013, when John Carmack demonstrated the Doom BFG using Palmer's, ski goggles that have been duct taped to some lenses and a display to show off VR. And Carmack showed it behind closed doors to a number of people, and there were several videos, and he said, this is the strongest VR experience you can have right now. And that led to the Kickstarter, which led to the Oculus being funded as a company and the millions of dollars that they raised. So Carmack was at ZeniMax when he helped Lucky,
There's no disputing
demonstrate that. So it'll be interesting to see, as you said, what comes out. It's a really fascinating thing, and ZeniMax clearly wants a part of this VR action.
And it's because there's no action on this lawsuit for like 2 years.
Yeah,
and it's because they were trying to settle and they just couldn't come to anything. Is that what the guess is?
I bet ZeniMax is happy to let it go because they see the momentum. And if Facebook turns VR and the Oculus into a bigger industry, it's going to be worth more and more to them.
I mean, does it appear to be? I mean, they're basically accusing, if I'm reading this correctly, they're basically accusing, Lucky of getting everything he did to build the Oculus Rift from Carmack, stolen from ZeniMax, and that has completely fabricated this entire thing.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's probably a case to be heard on both sides. Like I would like.
Yeah, but I could bring a case that you beat me half to death with a shovel, and then I forgot to go to the hospital. I mean, like you can bring this the chilling effect. We were talking about this earlier. I mean, people bring cases all the time.
Yeah, no, I have more respect for John Carmack than anyone in the industry, just because I have been following his entire career. I believe he's
earned that.
One of the most intelligent people in the industry. I don't believe he would have made a mistake like this. So I have faith that Oculus will, defend themselves.
Well, let's move on from the legal stuff into the more fun stuff. Big screen.
Yeah, so there's a huge big screen update. Have you tried this yet? This app?
I haven't tried big screen yet.
So big screen is. Have you tried it, Patrick?
No.
It's an environment where you can go in and be social with other people, and you can share your screen. It's a social screen sharing app essentially. When it launched, there was one environment, kind of like an apartment, and you could get together with 3 other people. I believe it maxed out at 4 people tops, and everyone could see everyone else's screen, hovering in front of them or projected onto a wall, and you could warp around the room, and you could talk to each other. Mm-hmm. Now, they've released a huge update this week that includes avatars, so now everyone doesn't look alike. You can now create like a me, or what is that? The me's, right? Create an avatar, make it look however you want. There's really interesting eye tracking in it. It's
Rudimentary.
virtual eye tracking, but it's simulated in such a way that actually is pretty good. And the blinks are strangely tied to your head movements, so it actually looks very natural. There's lip syncing that's done very well, and you can now finally, it's out of beta, you can stream audio to the environment.
That's great.
So now everyone can watch a movie together or watch you play a game, and soon you'll be able to choose who gets to control the audio.
So I know it's a totally different style, but how would you compare it to AltSpace, which is the other kind of mainstream social app right now?
I haven't spent much time in AltSpace.
I spent a bunch of time in AltSpace this week.
Did
you? Because I haven't had any of those social experiences, so I did the opposite. It's a big screen. I went and tried AltSpace. I feel a little faceless in AltSpace, I guess is what I would say.
I don't know. It's a kind of different experience because you can walk through AltSpace, whereas a big screen is really holding fast to the locked environment. They don't want to push the motion sickness factor at all. A lot of people want them to allow that as an unlock for people who are comfortable with moving around the virtual environment. But they have these nodes that you can warp to and then walk around in your room scale. I don't know. So it looks more finished at this point now, especially with these new avatars. You can also play side-by-side 3D video games, such as the new Deus Ex, which supports, if you have a monitor that supports side-by-side 3D video, you can play that in VR in 3D. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting way to play 3D because it's in a way, it's better than 3D glasses because each eye is actually getting an independent image. And, there's no flickering or anything like that. It's cool. It's got it's also available on Oculus Home. So it's evolving as the social app, and it's interesting to watch that happen.
Is it more of a social app, or is it more just letting you use your computer inside of the Oculus?
They're
VR
framing it
environment?
as a virtual desktop with social features.
Okay,
that's their priority. It's like a virtual desktop, which is interesting because there is virtual desktop. There is an app that does that exclusively, but this is that same thing, but done more cute and in VR
for the business. For collaboration.
It could, there's a future in that, don't you think?
I think this is the stepping stone towards virtual makeouts on Facebook.
Yeah.
But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that needs better haptic feedback.
There's a lot of game reviews starting to deploy. We're seeing some awards. Abduction is one you picked out.
Well, I haven't played it, but Abduction is from the creators of Myth and Riven.
Whoa.
Myst. I'm sorry, what did I say? Myth? Myst and Riven. I don't know. I hope I don't have to explain what those games are, but they have come back to make another game.
How would you explain Myst? I have no words for that.
Looks
game.
Beautiful. But the weird thing was the VR version was fully reviewed, and the reviews were unembargoed and published. But then on release day, they announced that there would be a delay to the VR version. So it's done, enough for people to review it. None of the reviewers complained. They all it's gotten consistently good reviews.
Is it a touch game, or is it on?
I don't know.
No.
The review that was linked to said it's frustrating and often cumbersome controls, and VR movement makes exploring and backtracking a chore.
That's a problem.
The game was great, but the stuff that makes it VR sucks.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if they got wind of some of those reviews and are making some tweaks.
Yeah, if they're from the creators of Myth, backtracking is an important component of that game.
I read mostly positive things.
Well, everybody seems to love the actual game itself. In this particular review, they were just kind of like...
I'm excited about it. I just think it's interesting that they announced a delay on release day. That's a little odd. But there's another game that was released and was officially released is the new pack of pinball games.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit
We
last
said it was
week.
coming. Now it's here. It came out yesterday for us, Tuesday. Pinball FX2 VR Season 1 has been released, and it's $25, I think.
Nice.
5 tables, works great in the pin sim, and it's awesome. It's I just love having more than 3 tables in this game. The audio is standard for this company, not the greatest. The voices kind of sound half-hearted, and could be easily replaced with something better. The music's not great, but the tables are beautiful. The gameplay is fun. It's
so everything we want it to be, and it works well with the pin sim.
Yeah, it works great with the pin sim. I just wish that this company would release their actual licensed tables. Their Star Wars tables, I think, would be great. Obviously, that's going to cost them more money to make those.
I've been meaning to ask, can you do English on the pin sim table you built?
What do you mean? English? Oh, you mean by nudging?
Hipping, nudging.
Yeah, you're speaking pool language for pinball.
It's a thing.
Yeah. No, it's got an analog accelerometer in there, so whichever way you nudge it, it actually affects it in game that way.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I've been taking a deep dive in a lot of the educational VR games. So the Discovery has a bunch of 360 and a bunch of groups have 360. And then I did Titans of Space, which has been out for a while, which is about, flying and zipping around like the planets and different stars. And then I did the Body VR, which is like you zoom down, you can go through the entire body. I have to say, I've been underwhelmed with one exception. The Apollo 11 thing blew me away.
Okay, I hope so.
That's the one that's blown me away.
I still tell people
everything
about that
else. I feel talked at in these games so far.
Everything else, I mean, I'm trying to. I think I've experienced one of them, but it seems like a lot of. I hate to say this, like we have old content shovelware into VR, like.
Some of the 360 videos that Discovery put up were really cool when you're underwater and you got to kind of like look in the full environment, but. I feel lectured at. I don't feel like I'm interacting with anything yet. Maybe that's still coming.
It's
I had
hard to,
really high hopes for Body VR too.
It's really hard to do. It's really hard to do interactive with video. I'm pretty sure I had my hands on the rig they used to shoot that video, the Discovery video, and the people that were creating that come from a very two-dimensional storytelling environment, so they probably didn't have a lot to work with on that.
So I was hoping for Body VR because it was developed for VR, and you have this immersive environment. You're in a little ship, and you fly through blood vessels and go into the brain, all this kind of stuff. And that part was cool, seeing everything where you're shrunken down. And my kid is watching The Magic School Bus right now on Netflix, so he's getting the same experience that I was getting in VR.
It reminds me of Inner Space.
Yeah, in a different way. But it wasn't like I could never manipulate anything. It was like, here's a picture of a red blood cell that's like flying by.
So basically, instead of being No Man's Sky in a completely, immersive environment, you have No Man's tour through the human body.
Pretty much. And though I have to say, the Apollo 11 one still blows me away because like it brought a tear to my eye, hearing the voices.
Me too.
And all that stuff.
But interestingly, that's a very slow-paced, linear experience.
The pacing
not
works.
Interactive.
But it's not interactive because it's a history thing. And I approached it that way, and I was fine with it because because there was so much history involved. Anyways, there's one other game you want to talk about, Wilson's Heart.
Oh, I
saw the trailer for.
Yeah, well, they announced it at E3 earlier this year, and it's looks largely black and white, Twilight Zone-ish kind of experience, mystery experience. I've been looking forward to it. It just won Best Virtual Reality Game at Gamescom in Cologne.
They have a pretty stellar lineup of voice actors that are in it too.
Yeah, it looks solid.
Like Alfred Molina and all these other actors that are doing it. I was surprised it's black and white. Mm-hmm. But it's touch enabled, so I'm going to be excited to try it out when I get my touch in October.
Me too.
That's right. I'm just calling it right now.
Won't
it
that
looks
be great?
Like that mix of puzzle and mystery. Everything is suspense right now that I've been playing though, so I'm excited to try a different style.
What are you playing?
So I just finished Edge of Nowhere, right? Edge.
Oh, did you finish that?
Yeah, I finished it.
I haven't started it yet.
Which is all suspend.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Thumbs up.
Oh, I loved it, but it just like Lucky's Tale, you run out of real estate. It gets old.
Yeah. They released a Lucky's Tale patch that unlocks all the levels, so you don't have to go through and get all the coins anymore.
Oh, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, me too. Ready to move on?
Anything else in VR?
Not that I can think of.
Well, let's go to our last segment.
Testing this week. Hey, what have you guys been testing?
Hey, Norm.
What have you guys been testing?
His fingerprints are all over this episode.
We can't get rid of him. The ghost of Norm. Always coming back. What have you guys been testing?
I got quite a lot. I meant to bring it. Damn it. I'll bring it next week. I won't even talk about it. I've been messing around with this new gamepad called the 8-Bit Do is the company name. The NES 30 Pro. So it's styled after the original NES controller, but it's Bluetooth and also USB, and it works as a gamepad with all your devices. But I'm hooking it up to a Raspberry Pi. And I finally got it to work. It took me 2 days to get MAME to recognize both the analog sticks and the D-pad. And that's what's cool about this gamepad is it has dual analog sticks. So it will work great for Robotron. And it has a D-pad. and it has 4 buttons and shoulders. It has like every button imaginable in a very small form factor. So what my plan is, inspired by Steve Lynn's tweet, I want to turn one of these old Coleco games. If you're watching the video, I'm holding it up. It's this 1981 Coleco tabletop game into a Raspberry Pi arcade emulator. And I'm going to replace the controls with an embedded NES 30 Pro.
Nice.
So it fits perfectly.
And we talked about is it a Kickstarter or somebody was selling them last week?
No, it's not a Kickstarter. Yeah, someone is just selling them.
But they were like $400 or $500, right?
Yeah, not expensive. I mean, not cheap. So, but I brought this in to give to Sean. Sean's gonna model it in 3D. We're gonna make it 3D printable.
Nice.
And it'll be a whole project that hopefully in the near future,
awesome.
in the future, you'll be able to download and print your own. And the controller is $40. Raspberry Pi 3 is also maybe $30 or $40. It's not gonna be that hard to make because it's gonna be a USB controller. Typically with Raspberry Pi or any kind of main box, it's the wiring of the controls.
It's funny because I'm actually building a main box.
There you go.
And I had forgotten just what a joy it is.
It's just tedious. But so hooking up USB for controls is going to be a dream. That's why I think this will be the easiest to build main box. And so I'm excited to get it done.
Not counting the 3D printing and the assembly and the...
That seems easy to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you using for a display?
It'll be an HDMI LCD.
Nice.
So I have a 4.3-inch display and a 5-inch. We're going to see which ones we can get away with in there. We'll probably make a vertical and a horizontal version.
What games are you going to put on?
Well, I mean...
You're going to put them all in?
It depends on the orientation. So I'll probably split them up and only do vertical games for the vertical orientation and horizontal. But it runs every emulator. Or, the earlier ones.
No, but I meant, is there a game you're particularly excited to
I
put on?
would look forward to Robotron.
Nice.
I love the Donkey Kongs. So I'm just a fan of anything pre-1985.
Cool.
Yeah.
What else?
Oh, well, that's it for this week. I'll bring in the other stuff next week.
Oh, okay. Patrick, there's probably a few items on your list. I'm
still
guessing.
Flashing back to Robotron, which they have.
I can't even get past level 3, but I love that game.
Oh my goodness, that was a mind blower. Let's see the and this is a few weeks ago. We didn't get to do a video on this because of the move, but the HDMI hats for the $9 chip PC finally came out, which makes it to me much more usable than the. It took me a while because when I originally got one, I'm like, I have to find a monitor that still accepts
composite, right?
Yeah. Still accepts composite video, standard def video, but and they also came out with a pocket chip, which is, the battery and the touch screen and the crazy old school keyboard.
We did a video on them at Maker Faire and then got a couple in ourselves.
So I'm actually manually typing into the, command lining my way to turn the pocket chip into an audio player.
To explain what that, I mean, that is an amazing $9 computer, not necessarily because of just the processor, but because of the peripherals that are built onto it.
Yeah.
It has crazy storage, like 4 gigabytes.
Yeah, it's like part of what's amazing is so they got like 4 gigabytes of storage that the operating system is loaded onto, and one of the things that they didn't have at the initial launch that they do now is they actually have headless versions of the operating system you can download and install. So if you want to operate this as a little a media server or a backup server, or if you just have something where you don't need an HDMI interface for it,
right?
You don't have to run the overhead for a desktop. You don't have to run the overhead for that.
And it has built-in wireless, right?
Yeah, it has built-in. So it's
really for $9.
Yeah,
built-in
BGN.
wireless?
There's no Ethernet, but there's BGN. The video for $9 is a single USB port, but the USB port is separate from the networking. So that's one of the big complaints about the Raspberry Pi, is because they kind of commingle the USB and the networking on those. Basically GPIO pin compatible with a lot of the Raspberry Pi stuff, and then it actually has a battery controller for a lithium-ion battery that comes on board for $9. So you can basically create a charge. It'll handle the charging for a lithium-ion battery.
Oh, using the USB
board.
jack? Or the power jack?
I would probably use the power jack, but there's the actual
That's
a
cool.
little plug-in for the lithium-ion battery on that one. It's micro USB for charging, but it's a pretty amazing piece of hardware for $9, especially if you want to do something. You don't particularly want to be running a desktop on it. And for me, it makes me laugh because the HDMI module is $15 and the computer is $9.
That's funny. Is it compatible with any of the Pi OSs?
Not really. I mean, that's the big thing about this is you're going to, if you're going to do something like this, you're going to learn a lot about Linux.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination, but you're gonna have to kind of sit down and work through. I mean, this is the same thing we talked about with like the Odroid C2, where if one of the nice things about the Raspberry Pi is there's all these distros that have been compiled for it. There's all this different software. You can just download it, and the distro has been customized to do something on the Raspberry Pi. And there's that community is accreting like a reef. Around the chip and to a lesser degree the Odroid. But, it takes time to do that, and these have only been out for a few months. I don't know, good crew people. I've gotten to go to their offices over in Oakland, and they're getting creative with stuff.
How are they making money?
I don't know, volume?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Raspberry Pi's plan. And they achieved it. I mean, good luck to them, because that's an amazing deal.
Yeah.
What are you going to build with it?
Like I said, like this one actually, I think I'm gonna end up doing. I've been playing around with. I guess they changed the name now. Doing a sync box with it because BitTorrent spun off Sync into its own company. I like to do a sync box with one of them. Played around using it as a media server. I just started playing around with the headless version of the operating system, which I think will be ideal for a media, so a very small, simple media server. But like the big thing I want to do right now is get the Pocket chip running as an audio player. Just because why not do a weird, oversized, ridiculous-looking touchscreen controlled audio player?
Is there an SD card reader on that?
SD card, no.
So how do you load a new OS on it?
You connect to it
Wirelessly?
USB, yeah.
Oh, USB.
Yeah.
Huh. Crazy.
So yeah, you have to actually jumper it and then load the operating system onto it.
Cool.
So.
All right. What else have you been testing?
I have to break down and write a review of AudioQuest's Nighthawks, which are the headphones you're holding right there.
I'm holding, yeah.
They're really nice. A long time ago, I did a conversation with Norm about sort of listening to audio and what does audiophile mean and all of this stuff. And a lot of it's, BS. A lot of it's real. I don't have the cable plugged into those right now.
No.
But,
I was just seeing how heavy they were.
They're pretty light.
Comfortable.
If you turn them around the other way, they'll fit better that way. That's an interesting idea where AudioQuest gets a bum rap because they sell a lot of I don't know if they sell a lot, but if you want to spend $3,000 on an HDMI cable, they'll figure something out to sell you, right? They made their bones doing incredibly expensive cables. And then a few years ago, I got to play around with an AudioQuest Dragonfly, which is a USB adapter. They just came out with the black and the red versions at CES this year. But it was amazing because it was a USB audio adapter, and the audio and the headphone amp inside of it are incredible. And it was like $130.
Yeah, you have some fine taste when it comes to some of this stuff. So when you're saying that it was incredible at $130, because you've talked about $1,000.
Yeah, I don't buy thousands. About $300 is kind of where I cap out on audio equipment. Although that's kind of hard to do with speakers, but. I started playing around with like the planar magnetics last year, and the AudioQuest people were like, "Hey, check these out. They're a little different." And one of the things that they're very different. You kind of tune a headphone, and a lot of headphones are tuned so that they have this big bump in the high end. And a lot of the reasoning for that is based on acoustical measurements that were done back in the 70s. And these are not only incredibly comfortable. But it's a semi-open design, so you don't want to be using them on the subway, but that gives it sort of a larger soundstage or sense of space or air to the music. But they've gone pretty nuts trying to eliminate distortion, which may or may not help your listening experience. But they did some really interesting stuff with the way they tuned them, and so that there's less of an emphasis on the high, which makes them a lot less fatiguing, and they just sound fantastic. But it's interesting to watch people who have a lot of time with high-end headphones. A lot of them will put these on and be like, "Oh, it's too muddy. It doesn't sparkle the way I want it to." And it's a really interesting question about whether or not a lot of very popular headphones make audio. They kind of like, "Oh, people like this sound, so we're going to jack that up." Or mediocre science from the 70s says for, hearing protection, we need to reduce this area because of, head-body transfer function issues. And that's how a lot of headphones have been engineered. So people come to expect this be this sort of bump, around 1,000 or 4,000 K or wherever it is.
Where are studio mastering labs? leveling to? Or what are they expecting the user to have?
Well, I mean, if you listen to sort of like hardcore audio geeks, they're compressing it so much it doesn't matter, right? Because they're trying to make something that pops.
No dynamics.
Yeah, that kind of pops really well for radio or MP3s, which is a kind of a bizarre concept, but is the reality. I've seen. There's always the pictures of like Quincy Jones using the I want to say the AKG headphones. I've seen recording in studios in New York City where they were using Sony MDR 7506s. In a lot of cases, they're pretty cheap headphones.
That's like $100 headphone, right?
Yeah. Biodynamic like DT770s. They're almost always closed back headphones. When you're talking about somebody who's got like a full on room, in a lot of cases, it's a near field monitor. In some cases, they have a big old pair of like B&W or focal speakers, but in many cases, it's just a couple of speakers sitting on a desk and somebody that starts twiddling the knobs to kind of bring everything to the sound they want. It's been a while since I'd be curious to see some of the studios now, but I've been told that there's some shockingly bad headphones and speakers in use.
Like on purpose, because that's what normal people use?
That's a really good question. I think for a lot of these people, they're bringing their own headphones and plugging them in, or they're using the near field monitors in the studio. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's also one of those things where what used to be, a lot of the best albums in history were recorded with what were fantastic speakers for the time, but are, mediocre or weak ass speakers by modern standards, just because the technology's advanced so much. But I don't know. The Nighthawks are really interesting because they also went through. The person that designed them went through and just did a ton of stuff. Kind of, it's kind of like looking at a race car, where there's more things every time you go deeper. It's like, okay, how do we make the brakes faster? Could we make the brakes work better? How do we make the tires stick better? Okay, now we want to speed the engine up. Now we need more brake. It's just like they've gone through and sort of finessed so many corners of this headphone. It's kind of an interesting.
Yeah, but a race car can be tweaked to achieve a higher top speed,
right,
or better handling, whereas this gets down to a matter of taste.
Yeah, on some levels it's taste, and you can also argue on some levels, it's interesting to look because I want to say Harman's going down and do a lot of basic level research where they're trying to create a profile, where they've done listening tests with hundreds of people and they're trying to create a profile for what people actually hear and what they want to hear.
Wow.
And a lot of the kind of basic level audio research that you haven't seen in a long time.
Science.
Mm-hmm. Or at least trying to figure out how people listen to stuff and how different things impact that, or whether they hear different changes. One of the big things they did with these was figuring out
in real world locations too. That's the other thing I was wondering.
I'd love to talk to them more about that. I've just read some of the articles and read some of the AES stuff.
Where are they based?
Harman, I think Southern California. Harman Labs, I'm pretty sure, is in Southern California.
That's Harman Kardon, is it?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to keep an eye out for that research because that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, Harman.com. So
there's one thing you've been testing that like really perked up my ears.
Oh, I bet I know what it is.
It's the Amplify.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about Eero, which is the Wi-Fi mesh network that you have been using, Jeremy.
I bought it right before the Amplify, I think, went on market.
And what is your sort of satisfaction with the Eero so far?
Oh, it's just been a dream. It's an absolute dream. I have I don't know what it is, but I assume everyone has this problem, but I could never get Wi-Fi in every corner of my house. I have 4 family members, all of whom at some point in time want to be on simultaneously. And there's rooms with no Wi-Fi whatsoever. There's rooms that show you have bars, but the internet just stops anyway. And, I've tried bridging routers together.
That sucks. That always sucks.
And that takes a while to figure out what all the settings should be, and you have to run Ethernet. I hadn't believed in wireless bridging, and I guess to be honest, I still haven't tried it. Patrick can attest to his experience with it, but I tried this Eero system, which is basically 3 wireless N routers that come together. They're all identical, and you place them throughout your house. And you can either bridge them wirelessly or over Ethernet. One X is the main one. And I bridged them using Ethernet because I had my rooms wired already. And it's worked great. I now have wireless everywhere. Feels like a brute force approach to what could have been done more
it's not elegant,
more elegant, but it is just blanketing as hardcore as you can the signal throughout your house. I feel like we must be getting cancer somehow.
And the only real big knock on Eero has been the price. I mean,
It's $500 for this kit.
Yeah, for three. I think
For three, yeah. And I mean, honestly, I was so desperate after so many years of trying to get this to work that I paid it happily. And I'm actually only using 2 of them because I set up 2 as a test to see if that would be enough, and it is. So I'm thinking I'll just keep the third one for if my neighbors end up getting the same
For
setup
Fridays, yeah,
and I
sure.
have to fight harder, then I'll throw the third one in there, or if we move into some other house.
So I was all getting set to budget for an Eero, and then I turned on Tech Thing, and Patrick's on there. And it's been a while since I've seen you review a product that positively.
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it was like, you could see there was like a level of just bewilderment and excitement because you're like, I can't believe this worked.
Well, yeah, it's
So let's talk about the Amplify. The Amplify is by Ubiquiti.
Ubiquiti, right? So Ubiquiti, the big networking company, started Ubiquiti Labs. Ubiquiti Labs is doing consumer facing stuff, and the first one they did is Amplify. So the Amplify people, they seeded reviewers with the HD version, right, which has a little more powerful radio and some more antennas, and does 3x3 MIMO instead of 2x2 MIMO. So the idea is like, this is if you're working in an office space or where you have a ton of devices. The one I'm really curious about, that's $350, and it comes with a little base station box with an LCD screen on the front of it, and 2 of their mesh points, which is essentially a wall wart with an antenna that sticks out of the top of it and a magnetic connection. So if the dog or my 4-year-old comes and yanks the antenna off, it doesn't, tear apart the wiring.
And you
or
just
tear
plug
apart
it
the
into a
device.
socket.
You just plug it into a socket. So instead of having, devices that look the same and look like sort of, I don't know, whatever you call those things, a little white box that sits on your desktop, you put the base box, near your cable modem or whatever you're getting your signal from, and then you put the devices, you plug the mesh devices around your home. So one of the things I'm doing, playing around with, is I've bought basically out of pocket, bought the SD version so I can compare the SD version performance to the HD version. And when Norm gets back, I'll have his Eero to test, and I'll look at all 3 of them. But if the SD version is as good as the HD version was, for $200, it's going to be a ridiculous bargain.
And you tried this out in the Hack 5 warehouse,
Yeah.
which is pretty big, right?
Yeah, I did it in my house, which is like 1,100 square feet, but full of horsehair plaster that causes Wi-Fi to die. And I did it in the Hack 5 warehouse, which is 5,000 square feet, and a quarter of it is cut off by multiple sheetrock walls. And it was pretty impressive. Like, I didn't set up like a full Chariot network or anything. I was just doing download tests. But like in the Hack 5 warehouse, it was everywhere from like halfway across the parking lot, 30 yards out front, the entire warehouse, including like Darren's office where Wi-Fi goes to die. It was probably 30-40% lower in Darren's office, but the majority of the warehouse was a consistent.
See, I think that's a pretty good review. When you say that's where Wi-Fi goes to die and I have reception there, I feel like that's a pretty good
I think
review.
that's, on the box, that should be in the store.
I can't wait to see that side by side, because $200 is nothing if that SD thing works. I mean, that's just barely more than a high-end router itself.
Yeah. No, I would definitely look at that one first, because the Eero has issues. Like, the only way to access the settings is through the app. So if you have a lot of port forwarding to set up, which I do, you can't copy and paste that from your browser window. Like,
static IPs can be a problem for people, and like Amplify's done its first software update, but I think all of these are very early in the development.
Yeah. Plus, the Eero has this weird issue where if it goes offline and it's acting as your main network router, you can't access your LAN.
Yeah.
That's as I understand it, right? So I never even set it up as my main router. I kept my old router as just that, not a Wi-Fi access point, just as the router. It then went to the Eero just to handle the Wi-Fi.
Oh, all right.
So I'll be sure to pull the WAN connection out of the back of the Amplify to see what happens.
Yeah.
I've been testing a couple things. I've continued my testing of sous vide machines. I've been playing with the Joule that we got from Chef Steps and comparing it to the Innova. and just putting them through a lot of different, benchmarks, like how quickly it heats up water and maintains the temperature, and more on that soon. I think we're going to do a review. I'm actually going to cook a whole meal just using a sous vide machine. Nice. Full meal. Drinks included.
That's great, man. That technology has been a real staple on Tested.
I have to say, like, the weird part has been the Bluetooth connection on the Joule has not been my favorite thing so far, but I got a little ways to go. And then I tried out Google Duo, which was their new answer to FaceTime, with lightweight video app, really intuitive. I've loved it. I don't know anyone on this thing. So I can't call anyone.
Yeah.
I've made a couple test calls to a couple of people, but I just don't know many people with it. But it's been lightweight. Even the video quality over mobile has been fine. It gets compressed a little bit, but it's not too bad. It has a feature where you can see video coming in of the people before you answer.
I like that.
Which is great, super intuitive. If this is the future, I think it's great. And I'm hoping Android just starts putting this stock on everything.
Oh, isn't it? It's not in the new OS?
Not yet.
No. Is there going to be a way to... does it work when it's in the background? So if you minimize to browse other apps, they can still see you and you can still chat.
Oh, I didn't test that.
Okay.
I didn't test it with the split screen either.
Okay.
Which is what I did try it with the split screen, but I didn't go full background with it.
FaceTime works that way. So if you start a FaceTime call and minimize to open a browser or something, they can still see you and you just can't see them.
I'll take a whirl.
I wonder if they'll release an iOS version. That doesn't seem like it would be unlike them.
Would Apple let that go?
Oh,
No
absolutely.
way.
They can't block
Google
that.
Duo? Yeah, get it on Google Play, download on the App Store.
Oh, really? App Store. Nice. Maybe I'll actually find some people on this thing now. Get my mom on there. All right. Anything else you guys been testing?
Negative.
All right. Ghost of Norman Chan, thank you so much. Thanks, Kishore. Jeremy, where can people find you?
I am at Jareware on the Twitter.
And Patrick, what's coming up for you? Anything to plug?
Oh my goodness. New episode of Tech Thing, new episode of AVXL, avxl.com or techthing.com.
And where can people find you besides everywhere, always?
That's a scary thought. At Patrick Norton on the Twitters.
I'm at Science Quiche on the Twitters. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. There's lots of cool stuff on Tested right now. I loved the light stage video that they did at USC Institute for Creative Technologies about creating sort of light field environments that's on there. It's an incredible video. Technical, great depth. Norm was awesome in it, and Joey held up well. They have these mirror balls that show that they can show like a lighting of a specific moment with this like 360 degree LED set, and you can get close up and see images magnified in the sphere balls. It's incredible.
That's cool.
They created one image from the Grace Cathedral just right here in the city, and it's perfect. There's a video from SIGGRAPH, I think, of it, of how they use it to recreate light environments in film too. It was pretty incredible.
You should check out Sean's lightsaber video too, because that's insane from a 3D printing modeling standpoint. It's just like it has layer upon layer of detail.
Oh,
awesome.
I got that lightsaber. Like I saw it and I was like, order, please, Sean. And it's incredible, especially the tearaway and everything on there except a couple screws is 3D printed.
Yeah.
Even the crystal inside. It's one of the most beautiful things. We have a lot more videos coming up. A lot of premium content's going to come down from the Arctic, and we have more to announce on that soon. But that's it for us. So we'll see you next week. Jeremy, you have an outro for us.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
Tested.
I just knock on someone's door, put my hand out and shake it.
Look, motherfucker, I'm Norman Chan.
See ya.
Does Will ever not curse? I don't know. I think that's just his thing. Uh-oh. By the way, thanks, Steve Lynn, for lending us the Donkey Kong machine. If I didn't give you credit already, you demand.